And buongiorno. Welcome to everyone this morning. We are a little bit thin on the ground, and that's mostly because of the accidents that happened this morning along Oakley. I understand there was no deaths, however, there was some accidents and some people were transported to hospital. So our thoughts are with those people at the present moment and those who are still travelling to work. Councillors, I'm going to just do a word of prayer before we start, so if you'd like to bow your heads, you're more than welcome to. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for today. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for allowing us to wake up. Lord, as we go through the decisions today, may your heart be with us, may your mind be with us, so that we may have your community in our hearts and minds, and so that we have the focus of Zonai community going forward. Lord, let us exclude our egos and allow the duties to be done in your most precious and loving name. Amen. Councillors, as we go through, and thank you, Councillor Connaught, for coming online. I know you're unwell, so it's great to see you there. If there's any declarations of interest, please make it known. We have apologies today of Councillor Golightly, Councillor Olsen, and we have a late apology from Councillor Cooper. I will move that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Peters seconded. I just heard a noise go off the far side here. Councillor Harding, this is the second time this has happened. Okay, it's been moved in second. All those in favour? Any opposed? Thank you, councillors. And yes, we have some supplementary reports, just so everyone is well aware. We have two speakers this morning, as well as we have the supplementary agenda of 7.8 and 7.9. These will be taken first as we go through our agenda, so we're bringing them forward. Yep. Members of the public, as I've said many times at these meetings here, the meetings are live streamed. They are. We do encourage those who are using the microphones to please speak into the microphones. Please make it very clear. And for those who are in appreciation to something that's being said, we encourage you to use the sign language version, which is raising your hands like this. If you don't approve, we always, the thumbs down. The most important, the reason for this is sound vibration going through the microphones and goes to the people who are listening at the other end. Then they won't be able to hear the speakers as people are speaking. We have as I said before, we have two speakers this morning. I believe from talking to Melissa, it's going to be Annette first. Annette, are you okay going first? Annette, come on up to the microphone. I know Nicolene has already spoken to you how to use the microphone. Yeah. Annette, as I said before, you have 5 minutes. Take your time. You're doing really, it's great to have you here this morning. We'd like to hear from you.
Thank you. My name is Annette Moncur, and I stand before you today not just as a concerned resident, but as the voice for Jim Beniston and Ruby Martin of 2A and 2B Millers Lane, Tikipunga, residents whose lives have been unnecessarily placed at risk for far too long. For an entire decade, Council has been aware of the severe safety concerns surrounding these properties. 10 years of documented worries, 10 years of pleas for action, and now the unthinkable has happened again. Another vehicle has crashed through into Jim's property, destroying a home that should have been a sanctuary. It could easily have claimed lives. It is both disturbing and disappointing that throughout these 10 years, the numerous councillors who have represented this ward, including those present today, have failed to champion this cause. Despite the recent devastation, no council member reached out until I personally contacted Mayor Vince Coccarello, who then referred me to Simon Reid. Simon has visited the site and several options were discussed. My understanding is that some preliminary ideas have been looked at around our discussions. Let me be absolutely clear. Council approved the development of these properties. With that approval comes a duty of care, a moral and potentially legal obligation to ensure the safety of these residents. This is not optional. This is not something to be continually deferred to future planning cycles. Then, of course, there is the valuation of both properties. At the moment, there has been irreparable damage done in the marketplace for future potential buyers to be wary of. I ask each and every one of you to put yourselves in Jim and Ruby's place for just a moment. Imagine going to bed every night wondering if it might be your last. Envision the terror of hearing vehicles screaming around that corner and feeling compelled to rush outside your own home to check if you're still safe. This is the daily reality you have allowed to persist for a decade. Senior Sergeant Rakiti from the Whangarei Area Response Manager stated it plainly. It was incredibly fortunate that police weren't dealing with fatalities. I want these words to resonate with every person in this room. Incredibly fortunate. Luck is not a safety strategy. We cannot rely on luck to protect our residents. But I am here today to say that future plans are no longer acceptable. A home has been destroyed. The next incident may not end with just property damage. I am formally requesting that Council, number one, immediately allocate emergency funding from contingency reserves to install proper safety barriers at this location, conduct an urgent safety audit of the entire area to identify any additional measures needed, provide a clear timeline not exceeding 3 months for when these residents can expect to see actual physical protection installed, establish regular communication with the affected residents throughout this process. The cost of these barriers is negligible compared to the potential cost of lives. The cost of emergency action now is far less than the potential liability the Council may face should tragedy strike before action is taken. This is not a matter that can wait for another funding cycle or another long-term plan. Ruby is 70 years and Jim is nearly 86. This is about Council fulfilling its most basic obligation to the people you serve, keeping them safe in the homes you approved. On Thursday of last week, Jim was diagnosed with cancer. He has another battle on his hands. I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Annette. I really do appreciate you coming and taking the time to come in. Are you happy to have a couple of questions asked to you? Are you happy to have a couple of questions asked to you? Yep, okay. Councillor Peters.
My question is to you, Your Worship. Is the crash barriers coming to the June meeting for this side?
At this present moment, Councillor, I have understood that there is a safety audit which is going through the process. They haven't received the final report at the present moment. However, that is integral. Just to make everyone understand, when there is an accident that happens, a safety audit is completed, both by the police and also by council.
Thank you. And thank you for coming and supporting your people. Thank you.
Any other questions for Annette? Annette, I just wanted to ask you, did any of the council team actually get in touch with the residents there?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that, Annette.
Thank you.
Melissa, it looks like you're going to take the next spot. Are you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Oh, it looks like you might be saved.
Very chaotic meeting on the morning on the roads. How are you, Vince?
Good, thank you, Bruce. Now, you know the microphone there. You've just relieved Melissa.
Yeah.
She's very thankful for that. Take your time and have a seat. The microphone's on, so people can hear. Do use the microphone. We look forward to hearing from you, Bruce, in relation to your petition.
Thank you, and apologies for being late. I'd rather chaotic morning on the roads. Kia ora koutou, Chair and Councillors. We appreciate you creating this opportunity for us this morning. My name is Bruce Copeland. I'm a trustee of the Bream Bay Guardians from Langs Beach. And I'm here today on behalf of communities around Bream Bay against sand mining. I'm also representing the more than 14,500 people who have signed 2 active petitions opposing marine sand mining in Bream Bay, petitions hosted on Action Station and by the Endangered Species Foundation. I'm here today to formally present these petitions to you. These petitions call on Northern Regional Council and Whangarei District Council to formally oppose the McCullum Brothers' application to extract 88.5 million cubic metres of sand from Bream Bay over the next 35 years. This is an extraordinary quantity of sand for one bay to sacrifice. This is not a minor activity. It's a large-scale industrial seabed extraction in a sensitive and culturally significant marine environment. The petitions cite the lack of authentic consultation with the community and mana whenua, the threats to critically endangered species like the te ara iti, the New Zealand fairy tern, the risk to local surf breaks, scallop beds and sensitive marine habitats, the broader concern that this project runs counter to any acceptable definition of sustainability, the social and cultural opposition from mana whenua including Patuharakiki, Ngāti Wai and Te Parawhau. The strength of opposition continues to grow. On the 26th of January, over 1,500 people rallied at Ruakaka Beach to spell out the words "Say No." 5th of March, Mary Kepa lodged a formal claim with the Waitangi Tribunal on behalf of Te Parawhau, Te Patuharakiki and Te Parawhau. 16th of March, hundreds of local fishers and community leaders held a boat protest in Bream Bay, sending a clear message that this is our moana and it will be defended. 22nd of April, over 80 supporters attended the Northern Regional Council public meeting at the Waipu Surf Club to show their opposition to sand mining in Bream Bay. The community and this council may not have a voice or a strong position in this fast-track process, but we are not powerless. We're asking this council to take a clear stand, oppose this project in principle and in practice, promote and encourage the use of existing new sand alternatives, ask for independent assessments to be provided to the fast-track panel, including comprehensive cost-benefit analysis, assessing the full economic, environmental, cultural and social impacts, including its role as habitat for threatened and migratory species in marine ecosystems, importance to biodiversity and fisheries and its recreational value. Also, fully explore risks and liabilities associated with the proposed sand mining activities, including long-term consequences for marine ecosystems, scallop beds, surf breaks, endangered species, coastal communities, tourism and climate change. Publicly acknowledge your concerns about these risks to Bream Bay, support mana whenua in their efforts to protect their rohe moana, and finally uphold the intent of Te Tiriti o Waitangi to ensure meaningful consultation. The application has not yet been lodged, but the flaws in the proposal are already surfacing. Waipu economist Hayden Green published a piece in the New Zealand Herald that thoroughly rebutted the economic justification for this project. There is no economic benefit for Auckland, Northland, or the people of Bream Bay. The financial benefits accrue only to one party, the McCullum Brothers. This application follows McCullum Brothers losing their bid to renew their Pakari and Mangawhai consent in the Environment Court last year. That decision is now before the High Court. It's recently been revealed that the Mangawhai sand spit has lost 420,000 tonnes of sand, raising the possibility that the spit could breach the open sea with serious consequences. McCullums are trying again, possibly hoping that moving from Auckland to Northland and an easier fast-track process will give them an easy win. They will find the opposition is snowballing as communities and Hapu iwi collaborate in opposition. It is worth remembering that this is just not a local issue. All over the world, sand mining has been linked to coastal erosion, ecological collapse, and even the loss of entire communities. Japan curtailed sand mining and pioneered the development of manufactured sand. Many other countries are following. The UN has declared sand the most extracted and least regulated mineral on Earth. New Zealand is not immune. We can't keep doing this and pretending it comes without a cost. There are better alternatives and other options. So in closing, the fast-track process excludes community participation of those who are most directly impacted. People are angry. The voices in these petitions are not fringe. They are reasonable, informed, and growing louder by the day. They're asking you as elected members to stand up and help protect what is precious and irreplaceable. We applaud Far North Mayor Moko Tapania for supporting his local community by opposing a fast-tracked marina proposal by advocating that the project be subject to public consultation. We're asking you to do the same, to demonstrate leadership, foresight and respect for the environment for tangata whenua and to represent our concerns in opposition to the proposal. Please send a letter. Bream Bay is not just sand, it's not a quarry, it's home, habitat, heritage and a living system. And it's not for sale, it deserves protection. Please stand with us. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate you taking the time to come in. I know it was a bit of a rush and you did it so calmly. Well done. Are you okay for some questions to be asked?
Sure.
Okay. We've got Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for that. That was on the fly, so great job. Thank you, and I appreciate your attendance and your passion here today. So I've just got a couple of questions, if I may, Your Worship. So, given that this application has been fast-tracked to the government, I mean, should therefore we assume there's actually a national crisis in the delivery of the availability of sand?
Yeah, that's the underlying purpose of Fast Track, is to, first of all, economic development, but McCullum's have presented this as a sand crisis. At the high point, McCullum's was supplying up to 60 to 70% of sand for the Auckland market from Whangarei. That's reduced to under 20%. So that's good evidence that the industry has responded and supply from other alternatives has come on stream. In Brooklyn in South Auckland, they've commissioned a $15 million manufactured sand facility. With another $10 million of investment, they can produce almost 60% of Auckland's sand requirements. Bearing in mind at the moment this proposal is no sand being landed at Whangarei. I expect in order to make the proposal more palatable, McCullum's will probably come out and say that they're going to start supplying sand to Whangarei as well.
And a follow-up question, if I may, Your Worship. So it's been positioned as a crisis in sand, I think you've already answered this, but just so that I'm clear in my mind, if in fact there is a future crisis in supply of sand, where would you suggest those sand supplies should actually come from, if not from seabed mining?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillors?
Not Whangarei Heads, thank you, Wish. I want to expunge from the records.
I think the issue is getting the sand to the right concrete plants from the right sources and to make sure that those are the ecologically most responsible places. So at the moment, a lot of the alternative sand supplies come out of the kaipara, and I think, questions have to be asked about the sustainability of that too. I mean, I don't think we can just keep taking sand from the natural environment. I'd love to see Northland Quarries investing in manufactured sand facilities and, potentially borrowing money from the infrastructure fund to be able to do that. But whilst companies can pick up sand virtually for free from the seabed, other companies are not going to invest in alternatives because it's not economically sound to do so. So if we don't have the ecological drivers, it's not going to happen.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Firstly, what have you looked at what risk there is to the community beside it if this mining goes ahead?
Yeah, at the moment, the early material from McCullum's, and also bearing in mind there's also been extensive arguments of these issues down at Mangawhai Pakari. It's just implausible that they can take this quantity of sand and there's no ecological benefits, there's no problems with the scallop beds, which are currently closed. This sand mining area is in the middle of the Bream Bay scallop beds. And, you know, over time, as we're seeing at Mangawhai now with the bar decreasing quite alarmingly, it's implausible that you can take this amount of sand and not in time have erosion. And one of the key reasons for that is it's not being replenished. The East Coast sand is a closed system. They believe that most of the sand that is in the system came from the Waikato when it exited onto the East Coast. And so the replenished sand is on the West Coast. And if it's going to be taken in a responsible way, the West Coast would be the starting point, not the East Coast. But once again, I think moving on, we should really start thinking about whether we're taking sand from the environment at all.
My second question is for your worship. The process for doing what Far North has done, have we time to do that?
Again, there are legal requirements within the fast tracking, and there is certain procedures that they must adhere to. I do believe that councils are pretty much removed from that situation. However,
But Far North has tried.
Again, whether you try and succeed or whether you can is two different things.
Thank you.
Councillor Mackenzie?
I think, thank you, Bruce. You touched on the alternatives, including manufactured sand. I think you answered that question. But could you just outline again what, if any, are the economic benefits to Northland out of doing this?
McCullum's economic assessment, which they've now set as interim, really focuses on the only economic benefit being transport. So they're saying that they're delivering a large quantity of sand into central Auckland, and that will save emissions. But that's false economics, because the ETS will look after the supposed benefits of the emissions or any additional emissions. Also, it's logical that getting sand into the centre of Auckland is not solving the problem. The sand needs to go to the concrete plants, which are alongside where the major demand is going to be in future. So previously there's been a big demand in Auckland for the Central Interceptor project, the CRL, and then also, I guess, the Auckland Airport runway renewal. So going forward, we need proper planning around this to make sure that we've got the correct quality of sand associated to the plants, and which are then aligned to the projects that are going forward, not just pulling sand out of the environment because it's convenient.
So extracting a bunch of sand from Northland, but there's no clear economic benefit to Northland?
No. And I think there's a conflation of economic benefits with financial.
Yeah.
There's, at today's retail, that quantity of sand, 8.5 million cubic metres, is about $485 million of retail sand. With the current royalties, that's about $3 million of royalties will go to the government from that. So, and there's no evidence that this supply will lower the cost of sand for anyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a pretty straightforward case until you dig back and you dig down.
Councillor, I need to remind you question.
Yep. But I want to give you the background first.
No, Councillor, this is, unfortunately, we don't have the time for that. We have got a large agenda, so I need you to get to the question.
What are we going to use to replace sand? Because we've taken it from the west coast, north and south, the east coast, north and south, and we're also taking it from inland sources. So what are we going to do to find an alternative to the sand that's going to be viable? Remember, every person who's got a bit of concrete has got sand. It's probably
Bruce, can you answer that question?
I'm building a concrete house at the moment. So manufactured sand is an obvious example. So at the moment, quarrying does produce a certain amount of sand. Putting a plant in will do that. There's a huge amount of material, including sand, which is pulled out of the Whangarei Harbour every year. If that could be processed, that's another source. Online Sands Limited has a 1 million cubic metre a year consent in with Waikato to pull sand out of what was the old Waikato riverbed. there is masses of sand on, not necessarily in Auckland, but, in Northland, but, you know, these things can be explored and sensible decisions made.
Bruce, probably the last question. I know Councillor Holmes has got another question.
Can I ask another question, Your Worship?
Yeah, got a question, yeah.
Just a clarification around the endangered species that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So again, just can you just elaborate a little bit on the potential impact on endangered species?
Well, Tara Iti is the most obvious, and I think, you know, there were 40 individuals left. I think they had a good season this year. They nest on the Mangawhai estuary and on the Waipu estuary. They're generally in trouble because of storms destroying their nests because of where they nest, and obviously any erosion is going to make that more difficult. But you know, the marine mammals in Bream Bay, Parahari Kiki has been doing extensive research in terms of that. I mean, the scallop bed, the scallop is in collapse. This is right in the middle of Bream Bay's scallops. I think, you know, we have to understand that our marine environment is in collapse. You know, and this is just a silly risk to take when we don't need to. Yep.
Bruce, I'm well aware that the last question here I just posed to you, I'm well aware that this is sand mining, which is generally requiring a resource consent, which is generally regional council.
Yep.
In relation to the far north, that was in relation to a wharf,
Yep.
which is a complete different situation. What effect do you feel that the district council has, and are you putting to a petition to the regional council?
Yes, so that's been done, and they're starting to look at reports and the information that they can present, as well as their representative on a potential panel. I understand that this might position this council as being an advocate, but I think also with the far north, they were then looking at saying, okay, this is going to go through, but there's no consideration about the roads and other infrastructure which is going to be needed to support that marina. And I think it's worth exploring what council assets are going to be put at risk, what ratepayer, the coastal inundation, for instance, the 50 or 100 year picture from Northern Regional Council is going to be affecting Whangarei District Council assets, property, and also ratepayers. So I think there's good reason for Whangarei District Council to be concerned.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
That's the last question. I'm sorry, Councillor McKenzie, I did say that would be the last question. Bruce, appreciate your time. Thank you for taking the time to come in. I know it was a long drive for you, so well done.
Good, thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Our next person on to us is actually Area Commander Maria Nordstrom, and you may take the hot seat there. You have got a police report for us, and I know that it will be interesting.
No pressure.
Press it again. There we go.
Testing. Cool. Thank you. Morning, Akoto. Good to be back here again, so thank you for the invitation. And would you believe today is actually my 2-year anniversary since taking up the position in 2023, so survived 2 years.
Sorry, Maria. Councillor? Thank you. Well, I hope 2 years goes better. Let's see how we go, eh?
Well, I think we've come a long way, and there's been quite a bit of change, and there's lots of change to come as well. So when I reflect on those 2 years, and I thought I'd talk briefly to start with. As you're aware, we have a new police commissioner, Commissioner Richard Chambers, who came in as our lead in November last year. And he's outlined his high-level priorities for police, which are quite clear for us in our future direction, and I thought I'd talk about those briefly today and share those. So the first priority that is around focus on core policing. So this is getting back to policing basics of enforcing the law. prevention of crime, response, investigations and resolutions. So it's doing the basics really well. Back to basics, responsive policing, and also our workforce growth and sustainability, which is a core function. Also supporting the front line, enhancing our staff safety, our well-being of our people and our capability. Leadership that is visible and connected, supportive and accountable. And fiscal responsibility, obviously, is a government target as well, including identifying opportunities to reinvest into the front line. And when I reflect on those 4 priorities, we're really well aligned to those here in Whangarei, I believe, over the last couple of years. We're also expecting our new refreshed Our Business strategy to be released in the next few weeks, so that will be publicised on our website, so waiting in bated breath for that as well, which will give us even more detail around those priorities, but also our goals moving forward as well. Last time I presented, we'd actually just brought in the gangs legislation, and the purpose of the legislation being to reduce the ability of gangs to operate and cause fear, intimidation and disruption to the public. And to date, the compliance under that legislation still remains good. We have only had 14 arrests here within Whangarei since the introduction of this legislation. The other change, obviously, that came in also is the mental health response change program on the 4th of November, and that was to reduce a justice response to health needs. Phase 1 was proposed to operate from the 4th of November to March 2025, and where no criminality and no immediate risk is present, police would not be involved. Transportation requests by mental health services are reviewed for risk and are much improved prior to a police engagement. And we here in Northern are remaining in phase 1 for an extended period of time. We're working with our health providers for their readiness to move into phase 2. So that's still, I thought I'd let you know we are remaining in phase 1 here in Northland for now. And I'm hoping that just prior to Christmas, you noticed an increase in police presence in our CBD areas, Okara, and on our roads over recent months as well. We've had an excellent recruitment drive over the last 12 months. We've been very fortunate here in Whangarei to have 26 new probationary constables join our team. And the calibre of those new officers has been outstanding. Excellent, good representation of female applicants of mixed cultural backgrounds, Māori ethnic, which is really good to see and reflective of our community that we police as well. With these extra staff, it's really enabled our growth of our youth and community teams, so more of our prevention teams, and more focus on retail crime, burglary, vehicle crime, road policing and community issues. What I've seen, and reflective again of the 2 years, that we're very much a responsive police force when I took up this role 2 years ago, and we've shifted really more to a proactive policing community focus on our issues. And an example of this was a successful outcome, which I'll share with you just in the last couple of nights, where we removed harmful substances out of our community, where our officers stopped a forbidden driver the early hours of the morning. A couple of nights ago, the driver was 19 years ago, was arrested for forbidden driving. In the process search, and the man was found to be carrying illicit drugs. A further search was invoked on a shoulder bag he was wearing across his body. Inside this, we located more than 21 grams of MDMA and 491 LSD tablets.
Wow.
A search inside the vehicle also located additional MDMA, and around $150 in cash was also seized. And this is an indication of the more proactive type of policing that we've been able to do with the extra resource coming into Whangarei here. We're also seeing the fruits of our Police National Retail Crime Investigative Support Unit. So this unit works in the background. It supports districts across the country with a lot of investigative work, particularly with our recidivist retail crime offenders through the information we're getting through Aura and obviously the police reporting from our businesses. This unit prepares files and sends them out to district to complete the apprehension. And just an excellent outcome just recently. We were tasked to locate and arrest one of New Zealand's most prolific shoplifters 3 weeks ago, and that offender was charged with 16 theft charges, totalling over $20,000 worth of theft. So there's some really good things happening nationally that are supporting districts, and this is part of the Commissioner's focus to really support the front line, those that are working in the front-facing roles across the country. As you may be aware, there was an opening of the proceeds of crime just recently, and we had a couple of applications made in partnership with our Bream Bay and Kamo communities around CCTV systems. Unfortunately, both these applications weren't successful, despite a lot of work that had gone on from local members with their communities. However, we're ready and waiting for the next funding round. But it gave an opportunity to talk about the last of the more recent proceeds of crime funding that we had in the last rollout of cameras, particularly in Kamo and Hikarangi. That will go into place very shortly. And the success of the CCT upgrade here has led to increased ability to obtain evidence in relation to our major crimes, arson, robbery and sexual assault, just to name a few. But it's also allowed police to assist our community in many other ways. As some examples, checking to see if the local ATM received the cash that was mistakenly left in the machine by a member of the public. Locating a parked car when an elderly woman has forgotten where she's actually parked, and locating mentally distressed person actively avoiding police and mental health. So there's lots of advantages out of the CCT, not just for crime, and we're seeing the fruits of that for our community. Looking ahead in 2025, lots of planning is still underway for the introduction, obviously, of our beat teams. So I'm awaiting the budget announcement today to see what is coming police's way, of course. And yeah, we're expecting that resource allocation for us here in Northland, but I'll keep you updated on that progress. So yeah, thank you very much for the time today.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. We've got a couple of questions from the team here. Looks like all the lights are going up red. Councillor Harding, you're first.
Mihi ana ki a koe te koromatua, and tēnā koe. Great to have you back again. 2 years goes very quickly, doesn't it? You would have heard one of our residents come through earlier to speak about the health and safety.
Councillor Harding, the microphone, please.
Wellbeing issue around the Mill Road area, and I did wonder, it wasn't to ask her about, I don't know if the cameras or anything around that area. I don't know if there are any, whether that might have been helpful to them as well. What kind of police intervention? I mean, this is clearly one of those issues where all hands on deck need to help. So just wondering what your whakaaro might be on that, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, of course, police role is to attend and investigate crashes. We collect a whole lot of data from our attendants, which is reported to LTSA and other agencies. And of course, if there's reoccurrence in the same location, then that should be identified, and there should be some analysis around, what's the causation of those crashes. Was there alcohol involvement, impairment?
Speed.
Is there opportunities to improve the roadway? or layout of a road. So all those sort of things are analysed in the background. I'm not really involved in that, and that's the conversations that are happening across agencies around what we might need to do, improve the road or the situation. And yeah, I took notes of that this morning actually, and it'd be good for me to discuss with the road policing manager if there's anything occurring that she's aware of around that location.
Mihi ana kia koe, thank you. And just one other further question. You did mention about the 14 arrests for gang insignia, and just wondered, was that, and I know there's a level of confidentiality, but was it just kind of marooning around in town, or was it at a gathering type of thing where you're
Just wearing in public place.
public places?
Yeah.
Kia ora, thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maria, welcome. Thank you. Now, we don't know what the budget's going to give you this afternoon. Here's hoping. The focus for funding, I know that you've, not just you, but the police as a whole, to pick up on the funding of several tens of millions of dollars, have to focus on specifics around driver behaviour. How can we as a council help you change that focus, or help perhaps lower that focus in the speed wise so that you get more opportunity to chase these little sods on dirt bikes around town? While I'm at it, could we have some fog again tonight? Because it seems to keep them at home.
I don't think
was very
Maria was
quiet
able to control the weather. However, Maria, are you able to answer that?
How can we help you, Maria, try and change that focus so that you've got budget to spend trying to get rid of these issues that we have locally rather than the national view?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an opportunity to share it with central government. Obviously, we do receive funding from LTSA, and part of that is we have targets to meet across speed, breath screening tests, restraints and distractions. So our focus has to be, our resource has to focus on those priorities and achieving those priorities. That sometimes takes our resource away from some local community issues. For example, the dirt bike riders, the boy races, etc., which are heavily investigative requirement is needed for those situations, but how do we reduce the harm and actually put some resource into that as well? So I think there needs to be some awareness at central government around those local issues and making them aware of that, and how we might actually get some more resource or a shift in our targets perhaps that will help us to put resources into those types of operations as well.
Cool. Councillor Peters.
Me?
Yes, Councillor
You said
Peters.
Mackenzie. I heard Mackenzie. My question, welcome, and thank you for taking time to come to present to us. My question's around level 1 in relation to supporting those with mental health. What does it look like? And also in your answer, could you also say what sort of response are you getting from community people, especially during the night? And what sort of response are you getting from the health people? Is there any improvement in their response in helping you do whatever level 1 looks like?
There's not a lot of change with level 1, to be honest. We still get the calls for service. It may just mean that it's not prioritised as it would if there was no criminality involved. So that's what we would be looking for, is the criminality. We're in really good discussions with health at a local level around the phased approach, and that information is then fed down to National Office around our progression into a level 2 phase. We appreciate the fact that health have to be ready to for us to move into phase 2. Some areas across the country, I understand, have gone into phase 2 already, but that's based on the readiness for health to pick up on things like transportation, etc.
Have they put any more has health put any more resources, especially in the nighttime, to making that transition?
I
In
wouldn't
Whangarei.
be able to comment on their...
And you haven't seen any change? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maria, for the answer there. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Worship. It's actually 2 years since the blessing of this building as well, which is interesting and big day for the district, obviously 2 years ago. Te iwi tahi. A question from one of my constituents. Why is Whangarei Police Station closed on the weekend when many antisocial crimes are committed during the weekend periods?
You'll find that a lot of police stations across the country are only actually open Monday to Friday, main police stations. I still have a focus on extending those hours from Monday to Friday. At the moment it's only 8 to 4, but that's been a resourcing issue which hopefully may be addressed in the near future. We still have access to police. We do have the call system on the Saturdays and Sundays. Unfortunately, that's probably more of a resourcing issue for us to man the station 7 days a week.
Thank you. That can be passed on to this individual. Thank you.
And Councillor Benny, you've got a question.
Yeah, very briefly. Thank you, Maria. Good to have you here. 2 years, congratulations. Got a before and after photo, would be nice to see. So a couple of things. So the Proceeds of Crime Fund, which was really looking forward to, some of the coastal and rural communities really looking forward to that being reintroduced. Have you any insight as to whether that is going to be as used and effective as it was before, or whether it's going to go towards to other, because the communities like Tutukaka and Teal Bay want updates for their cameras, and Bream Bay, and they're a really valuable tool, and the Proceeds of Crime was a great fund for them to use. But my understanding is it's not going to be there for that sort of project again, or do you know otherwise?
I haven't actually heard. I can't comment on that. Be interested to see what the outcomes of this funding were. So I haven't been made aware of where the funds have been allocated to as yet. But certainly CCTV fits within the categories that they put out for applications. So, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, I can't comment much
Right,
on
yeah,
that one.
no worries. Just last very briefly, the Millers Lane, Mill Road thing. Did we catch the offender for that?
I can't comment on that. Sorry.
Okay, can't comment, thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I'm not sure that the last question is one that we can answer, but anyway. Look, Maria, I do notice that you did say you had 26 new policemen, or police people. How many more are we needing for Northland, for your area, which is Whangarei and Kaipara?
Well, we've still got more coming.
Okay.
So we have a number that are still in the recruitment pipeline and heading down to college and expected in Whangarei. I just say keep coming. We're actually over strength. We're in a good position here in Whangarei. However, Mid and Far North is still slow in their recruitment. So we're actually sending a little bit of resource north as well, and over in Kaipara as well. So I have got resource coming from Whangarei and supporting Kaipara as well. So we just really don't want to turn that tap off. We need to keep it going. We're still losing, obviously we've got natural attrition as well, so we're going to be losing police officers, so I think we just have to keep our foot on the pedal when it comes to recruitment.
Appreciate that. There's been a lot of discussion, or a lot of in the newspapers, about the level of meth and drugs within Northland and how it's exponentially worse in other areas. How is your drug enforcement going? Are they requiring extra resources? Are they dealing with the issues that are in hand?
Yeah, I think the wastewater testing, for example, gives us an indication of usage within our community, and I think the presentation yesterday for those that attended was really, really helpful and educational for us to really understand potentially how we can understand our drug environment better in the future. yeah, it is concerning. We do see the impacts of methamphetamine on a day-to-day basis with those that we're dealing with, but I think it's the unknown use as well. And I think it's really a collaborative, multi-agency community response that's needed to look at this issue moving forward. We can enforce, but really we need to look at other ways of actually preventing in the future as well. So I think there's opportunities for us to really get round the table around this one.
Okay, appreciate that. No other questions for Maria? Thank you again for taking the time to come in. Appreciate it. You know, what we see you out on the feats and all that is great. I know that our community really appreciates actually seeing the police officers out there. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you.
Councillors, now I'm just, we're going to move on to item 6.1. Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. I will move Maria's report. Do we have a second? Councillor Peters is quick to second that. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. And Councillor Cooper, it's good to see you here, and well done getting through the traffic. Our next item is, of course, item 6.1, which is the minutes of the previous meeting on the 29th of April. This is both the open and confidential. Councillor Peters is once again very quick on the hand. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Reid, you're seconding that? Any discussion on that? No discussion. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 6.2, which is on page 29, which is the minutes of the previous meeting of the 12th of May 2025. Councillor Harding, you're moving that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Reid is again seconding it. Any discussion? All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 6.3, which is on page 33, which is the minutes of the 7th of May 2025. That's the open minutes. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Peters, you're quick with your hand again.
Excuse me. She wasn't there.
She wasn't there. Thank you very much for highlighting that. Good point. Thank you. So I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie seconding that. Well done, Councillor Mackenzie. Any discussion on that? No discussion. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We have the extraordinary business, as stated before. I was moving that forward. So I have to move this agenda item. Item 7.8 on Kamo Road, T2 Lane, and item 7.9 Northern Event Centre Roof Replacement Working Group, and confidential item 1.5 CCTO updated additional information. Subsequent to the agenda being circulated, item 7.8 Kamo Road, T2 Lane, and item 7.9 Northern Event Centre Roof Replacement Working Group, and confidential item 1.5 CCTO update additional information were distributed separately, but not within the timeframe specified in Lagoima. Councillor asked to consider these matters at today's meeting. I'll move that. Do I have a second? Councillor Hulse. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 7.8, which is the Kamo Road. This is on supplementary agenda, page 3, and Councillor Reid has asked to move that, and I will second that. Councillor Reid, are you comfortable with reading that agenda, reading the motion, please?
Yes, I will. As we know, it was supposed to have been in confidential. I just hope that all the negotiations are completed now that it's in open. Recommendations that the council, 1, notes that enforcement of the Kamo Road and Bank Street special vehicle lane will be enforced through a combination of cameras and through council's existing regulatory services contract with Armaguard. 2, notes that the additional operating costs associated with enforcement are intended to be offset through infringement revenue, including parking and misuse of the T2 lane, rather than be rate funded. 3, notes that 2 additional parking wardens, 1 additional parking administrator and 2 additional vehicles at a total value of $233,396.37 will be incorporated within the Armaguard contract. 4, notes that these additional services and costs will run concurrently with the current regulatory services contract term set to end on 30th of June 2027. 5, notes that the enforcement service requirements across the district will be incorporated into the new contract, which will be publicly tendered. 6, notes that these new costs will start on 1 July 2025 at the earliest and end on 30th of June 2027, and therefore will add a maximum of $466,792.74 over that 24-month period to the current total contract value. 7, approves a variation to the existing regulatory services contract with Armaguard, CON 22088, of $466,792.74, increasing the current approved 5-year contract value from $12,445,322 to $12,912,115. Sorry, yeah, I think you got the gist. Yep. 8, approves additional operating budget for the required additional parking enforcement staff of up to $466,792.74, noting that this budget is budgeted to be offset by additional income. 9, delegates the Chief Executive to negotiate the terms of the variation to the increased contract value and subject to final agreement by Armaguard to finalise, approve the changes. And 10, he will read these in future. Oh, sorry, no, that one wasn't there.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to speak to that, please?
I'm just about out of breath after that.
I know, I realise that.
No, I'll catch me breath. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Peters.
Just speak for him. Councillor Reid and I are on this bus committee, transport committee, and I think we are both very thrilled to see this coming into fruition, and the support that this council is giving actually is quite substantial to this happening. I also look forward to it extending, and we look forward to moving on to similar, it's called a special vehicle lanes, actually bus lanes, but for people with 2 people in their car, for Monu, which I very slowly travelled into council today over that lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Connop. Councillor Connop, we still can't hear you, Councillor. Don't panic, we'll come back to you. It's okay. Councillor Benny.
Yeah, while I am fully in support of the T2 lane, this gives me the shivers a little bit. 466,000 for enforcement. There's nothing in here to talk about education. And anybody that's been through the T2, T3 areas in Auckland will know that it's not clear. It's not, there's no easy rules that need to be done. And we are covering this, and we've even put it in our recommendation that the 466,000 will be offset by additional income from the enforcement of it. And yet there's nothing in here about education. I assume we will have an extensive education program, and I'm disappointed that it's not included in here, because This is just another form of tax on the people. And I think we've got to be really clear that when we do this, that we are satisfied that the education part of it has been fully completed before we start the enforcement, not afterwards.
Yeah, that's a good question to actually pose to the team here, Councillor Benny. Jim, are you able to answer the question, are we going to be doing an education program?
Through the chair, yes, we are. We talked at the Infrastructure Committee last week that there are a number of aspects to this corridor. Education is a big part of it, and the team are already, they were out last week talking to some of the schools, and there will be an education programme going out there so that people know how to use the T2 lanes. This particular paper is very much focused on the enforcement of the clearway, and in that regards, the residents and people who park along there is make sure that they understand that it needs to be clear in that morning peak. So yes is the answer.
Okay. Councillor Connop, I heard you were...
Testing.
Yep, you're all good now.
Oh, good. Don't know what happened there. The computer and the headphone says it works. Anyway, I just have a question, please, on page 7 of the agenda item. Right at the very bottom, it states that there have been also discussions with local service providers regarding the new parking technology. Now, I was I thought that was actually being progressed further than just being discussed about, as in that it was going to be freeing up more time for the staff so they could actually do more and get out to more places such as the extremities like Whangarei, Kamo, etc.
Yeah,
so Jim's got an answer for that one?
Through the chair, so as part of the parking work that we're looking at more generally as part of the parking strategy, improving the parking technology is a key part of that, and we've already started work looking at developing a business case. One of the drivers for improving the parking technology is currently we're very reliant on Rainer's team being out there and facing up to people who quite rightly are upset. So there's an opportunity by implementing the technology that we can reduce the amount of manual effort we require through the Armour Guard contract. So that's going to improve safety. We also get really higher levels of compliance through that process. So that's a process it started. We met with the working group yesterday and really been encouraged to push that along at pace.
Awesome. One last question, if I may, please.
Yes.
Cool. I can't remember which page this is on, but it's regards the it's only the detail within it, but it says in the agenda item, it says the T2 lane is only active between 7 and 9, after which it reverts back to parking. Now, I would believe that would be unless it's got yellow lines or other things in that space. So that is something that needs to be taken into account as long as people are going in there.
Yeah, and that is correct, Councillor. Absolutely, the T2 lane is in effect within those time periods, and then what measures are put on the pavement outside those periods will be enforced as well. And the team are very much nodding, just so you understand that that's exactly what they're saying. No other questions? Councillor Jovich.
Your Worship, in terms of the calculations, we have 2 hours a day, 3 people, 7 days a week, times 52. How do we get to $233,000? Is it a Mercedes involved in that, or? I don't see any calculations to actually support the rationale behind this, and also what is the rationale in terms of the revenue gathering mechanism and the conservative estimates? What is that based on?
Okay, for this point, I will go to the questions possibly to Rainer. Yes, Rainer's going to answer those questions. Those are good questions to answer.
Thank you, and through the chair. The calculations of the cost for the additional staff and additional vehicles is based on the current hourly rate paid to parking wardens and administrators, and the current vehicle cost within the current regulatory services contract, multiplied by the 40 hours a week that they are required to operate. 5 days a week, not 7, plus the usual staff overheads and oh my God, it's 12% profit margin, which equates to the just over $233,000.
Okay.
Question on that is
I think
40
there's more. I
hours.
think there's more to the answer here. Just checking.
Sorry, what was that?
There was more to the answer.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. The second part of the question through the chair, income, as stated in the report, is purely calculated on 6 hours per day, not 8 hours a day of enforcement outside the special vehicle lane, because we, for obvious reason, cannot predict what type of enforcement and therefore what income will eventuate from that lane. So I've taken the last year's income generated by the wardens, divided it by the numbers, times that by the 2 new wardens. That gave me a relatively conservative potential income value, as stated in the report. That clearly, therefore, does not include any enforcement income for the additional 2 hours that will take place during the special vehicle lane enforcement, nor does it include the increase in parking revenue as reported to Council in October last year. That put values of tickets up by, I think it was roughly about 70% at the time, because the values quoted are based on last financial year's, full last financial year, not the current one.
Councillor Jovic.
Didn't understand a thing of that. And what does 40 hours?
Sorry, what is?
I couldn't understand.
40
sorry,
hours.
I couldn't understand. Sorry, I couldn't understand your language.
The
40 hours. I have no idea what.
Yeah, Rainer, can you simplify that down, please?
Yes. Parking wardens currently work a 40-hour week, and that's what I was referring to when it came to 40 hours. So 40-hour week, Monday to Friday.
So just another, I can see where Councillor Jovic is going with this. So the question that probably needs to be asked, the biggest one, is the costs that are involved with running this are all supposed to be recuperated from the actual running of the T2 lane. So there should be a cost neutral. Is that correct? Cost neutral for council, or is it?
Just to add to what Rainer said.
Yeah.
So basically, the income from the additional resources is based on what we get from enforcement officers across the district. So essentially, they are enforcing the this clearway, but they'll also be working during the day in other parts of the district and in other parts of the town. So it's not all based on this 2-lane. And the so that's the revenue side of things. So we've taken a conservative approach. The intention is that in terms of operating the T2 line, it will be cost neutral at worst. So we're just working through that process now. But in terms of the enforcement side of things for this particular contract, then Rainer's done the work to calculate what's the additional cost that the contractor will face and how will that revenue be increased to offset that.
Okay. Councillor Reid.
Just 2 quick questions, if I could, Your Worship.
Yep.
I can't remember how many Armour Guard staff are already contracted to parking warden status, and does it cover Saturday till 2 p.m?
Through the chair, currently the contract provides for 6 parking wardens. They are employed to cover a range of different hours, including Saturday afternoon to, I think you're correct, 2 p.m. We don't provide dedicated parking wardens outside that, in other words, after 2 p.m. on a Saturday or on Sunday. However, there are other enforcement staff within the contract that hold the warrant of a parking warden, and they can respond to priority 1 call-outs, and they do.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Holmes, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yep. Just a quick one from me. So just back on the financials, actually, Rainer. So on page 8 of the report, you've outlined there that could generate 342,000 and the cost broadly is 233. I saw an article on the TV the other night about the difficulty that Auckland has in recovering costs. So they issue the tickets, but in terms of their actual recovery, it's really low. So my question is, the estimates that you've put in here, are they based on our real life lived experience of collecting fees here in Whangarei, or is this just a hoped for outcome?
Through the chair, they are based on real income. We work closely with our finance business partner in making sure that the figures presented here today are actual values of income for last financial year, on which these figures are then based.
If I can add to that, so there's two elements to this lane functioning. There's going to be the clearway enforcement function, which this paper is addressing with Rainer's calculations. However, there's the T2 dealt with the cameras. So there are two different functions. They're two different infringements. So Rainer's is cost recovery based on clearing the clearway. However, the cameras will be income, and they're quite they're a different activity.
If I may just follow up with that, possibly, Your Worship. So my point really was not about issuing the tickets, because I understand that. It's about the actual recovery of the fines once the tickets are issued, because it's very easy to issue them, but I know from other councils around the country, actually getting offenders to cough up is another matter altogether. So I was wanting to make sure that we base these figures on our genuine experience so far, and I'm hearing that some is based on existing experience, but in terms of the new T2 lane, that's a bit unknown. Is kind of known.
No, so it's not unknown. So Auckland Transport have been doing this for quite a long time. In terms of their cost recovery, in terms of people who may or may not be able to pay, I think that would be a general experience across the country. However, they have a 99.8% enforcement rate through the courts. So when the tickets come in, they are definitely enforceable. Whether the person is able to pay at the other end is a question which, as I say, and we may have more of that than Auckland do, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so Councillor Reid, would you like your right of reply? Okay. Right of reply has been had. Thank you, Rainer and Jim. Thank you for being here. All those, the item's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 7.9, which is on supplementary agenda, page 11.
I'm happy to move that, given that those guys are on there and other people on there.
Yep,
So.
I'm happy to second that. So you'd like to read that out?
Recommendations that the council, 1, agrees to the formation of a project working group to support the design, construction of the Northland Event Centre roof replacement. 2, agrees to following membership proposed by the Mayor. A, Phil Holst. B, Deborah Harding. C, Gavin Benny. 3, agrees that the working group will develop the terms of reference for consideration of adoption at the August 2025 meeting of council.
Yep. Would like to speak to that?
Other than it's been an ongoing saga, and I and the councillors involved there will get this sorted promptly, and it's long overdue.
Thank you, Councillor Jovich. Yes, I will just highlight there that there is a terms of reference which has been included in there, which is actually in relation to the item. It's on page 13. As Councillor Jovich has alluded to, the roof of the stadium has been happening for quite a while, and having the 3 councillors who actually probably got the most involvement within the stadium on there and over the time period is probably the most logical approach that we could possibly do to keep that progress moving and to make sure the project actually gets achieved within budget and actually better than budget. Councillor Reid.
You're stealing my thunder, Your Worship. I think after our meeting at the event centre the other day, this is a logical next step, and what 3 better people than those with that knowledge, and I wish them well, and everybody involved in that project is well and truly aware that the cash cow has now been hung out. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Reid. No other questions, no other comments? No. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried, thank you, Councillor. And apologies, Councillor Jovic, I didn't give you a right of reply. You didn't want it, that's good, that's great. Okay, we'll now move on to 7.1, which is the Whangarei seawall. Councillor Mackenzie, you've got your light on.
Yes, if I could move this, Your Worship.
Before you do, I'll just make sure that everyone knows which agenda item we're dealing with. It's on page 35 of the original agenda, so that everyone can find it. Councillor Mackenzie, you go for it.
Notes that the Council adopted the Regional Accessible Strategy in June 2024, which includes an aim that everyone can access popular beaches. However, funding for the implementation of the strategy was not approved in the 2024 long-term plan. That was point 1. Point 2, notes that the current seawall project is funded through renewals and is largely a like-for-like replacement. 3, notes that previous designs which incorporated accessibility ramps were rejected by NRC as they involved too much reclamation. 4, notes that the incorporation of an accessibility ramp opposite the Whangarei Road crossing is considered to have planning implications that cannot be addressed in time to deliver within this construction contract. 5, notes that the extension of the rock revetment seawall to the south would provide the best opportunity to incorporate an accessibility ramp, and that this location is supported by the Disability Advisory Group. 6, notes that there is no current budget to undertake this work, seawall extension and the ramp. 7, approves scope to extend the seawall to the southern end, incorporating an accessibility ramp, and in principle, unbudgeted spend of circa $275,000. 8, subject to the Council decision above, directs the officers to negotiate a price with Clement's contractors and return to Council for approval of additional budget and contract variation. 9, directs staff to establish a prioritisation of beaches that will be accessible for everyone and include a budget for consideration as part of the 2027 long-term plan.
Councillor Peters, are you seconding that?
I am.
Okay. Councillor Mackenzie, you'd like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We are in 2025. This project has been on the books with Council for 15 years. There are 6 staircases and 2 boat ramps included within the redesign of this rock revetment, but somehow we've managed to miss an accessible ramp for people with mobility issues in 2025, and this motion today is about putting that mistake right. So what I am struggling to understand, and just for context for people who aren't familiar with the area, probably about 90% of the old seawall is currently being replaced, but the southernmost bit, there's a little bay, and it's shown in the photos on page 37 and 39, are in a similar state of disrepair. That little section is not looking good and should have been replaced as a part of this contract, in my view. It notes that there was a request from the community not to replace it. Well, in the short amount of time that I've had this agenda, I've been to the ratepayers who do support it. I've been to the local hapu, Ngāti Takapari, who strongly support it. And I've actually spoken with the neighbours in that little bay who live adjacent to the water there, and they support it as well. So I'm not quite sure where this notion that this part of the project was not included because of public feedback. I also note that there was submissions made during the consultation on the seawall for the inclusion of an accessible ramp, and that wasn't picked up. So Council has signed up to a regional accessible strategy. You can't just sign up to something and then not deliver on it. I mean, and I think doing this today puts that right. We've got 2 options given in this agenda. One is to get on with it and do the job right now, and get this work to occur as soon as possible. The other is to throw it into the mix in the next LTP in 2027, along with everything else. And having gone through that process, we know that there are difficult decisions to be made, and it could well not make the cut. And if it does, it could be years and years away. It's a 10-year plan, so it could be many years away from happening, if at all. So on that basis, and on the basis of the statement on page 37, which says there is sufficient headroom in the current financial year to accommodate unbudgeted funding if council were to decide to progress, and on the basis that the location proposed at the south end means less planning hurdles, that there's a car park adjacent, there's a retirement village right across the road, where those people could use this to access the beach. It is an incredibly sensible option and one that I support. One thing I would like to just feed back to the team is that we need to make sure the design actually meets the needs of this section of our community. And one thing that has been highlighted is that people don't necessarily just want to access the sand or the mud flat, they want to enter the water, be able to swim. So actually be wheeled down in the wheelchair into the water. And so I would just, again, reinforce that the design needs to actually meet the needs of the community. So just careful consideration around that. But otherwise, in full support of getting this done and doing the job right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Peters.
This is not just endorsed by the disability group, but also the positive ageing group. They were very excited about the idea of this little very cute bay, very nice little bay, being able to drive there, even if they're not from that community, and go down and use and swim in an accessible place. One other thing that they came up with, and there was some debate about this, is that the stairs that are currently put in have not got bullnoses on them, so they're sharp. So some people thought that they were a hazard to falling on and hurting themselves. So just put that also in the mix. I'm very excited also to see that we're considering putting it into all design, this sort of project into future designing and looking at our seafront, because we are a community who likes to swim and we've got lots of lovely beaches. They need to be accessible to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Jim, I have a question for you, which has come out of this agenda item here. The 275,000 that is budgeted, which is classified as unbudgeted spend, where will that money be coming from?
I would defer to my colleague, but I imagine it would just be debt. So there are obviously unbudgeted requests coming in, and they would all be considered as part of the debt profile. There isn't any budget in the LTP in the 3-year period to fund this.
Helen, I think you're going to answer a bit more.
Through the Chair, Worship. You said anything like this, which unbudgeted, effectively is debt funded. However, it doesn't mean overall debt will increase because we actually run below our debt in the plans because of carry forwards. So what happens is every time we come to annual plan or LTP, we have a bit of a true-up and reconciliation and look at our opening debt position for that new cycle. So while it's unbudgeted, if we were to do all of our CapEx work, we would have a problem. But the fact is we don't do that, so there will be capacity within our debt headroom.
Okay. Councillor Hulse.
Yes, this is an awkward one for me because I've been arguing on two different issues here. One is should be no more additional spending put out during a season without going through an annual plan or a long-term plan. But the other one is I'm actually going to support this because I've been going on about getting the scope right. This project's been around probably about 5 or 6 years, and we still didn't get the scope right to include all the things that we've actually passed, like the disability plan and all that, accessibility strategy. So it made sense if we had contractors on the job to do it at the time the contractor was there, but it's been pointed out we can't do that, but we have to do a delay process, which is going to be more expensive. But this just highlights why we've got to get the scope right in the first instance before we let contracts. And we just had the previous item with the TT loans. We've been talking about it, we've got the loans in place, and we get right at the last minute another cost consideration about the enforcement. Yeah, that is pretty dumb stuff. We've got to be a lot better and get the scope right. And the councillors around here have got to drive to getting the scope right at the start. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. I'm going to move to Councillor Connop.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm supportive of this as well. But one of the biggest frustrations I have throughout renewals is the fact that we've heard that sometimes we get the chance to expand on them and develop them a bit more, but there's very limited and it's restricted in what it is. So the fact that we've not been able to accommodate this, especially with the accessibility plan that we've had, is a disappointing thing that we've had to bring it back. It would have been fantastic to have already gone through this, as others have already mentioned. The benefit of having accessibility for people in this type of a situation is it actually benefits everybody. So making a situation for not just somebody in a wheelchair, but somebody with a pram, somebody who may have a bit of difficulty walking downstairs regardless. So yeah, we need to do better and support this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Connop. Councillor Benny.
Yes, I just want to support what Councillor Hulse has said. I think this is another example of councillors coming in at the last minute, trying to change projects when early involvement would have seen all these issues hopefully not occur. Now, there's a group of us on a topic that shall not be named that supported unbudgeted spending, which was going to come out of rates, which was going to do all these things. I'm going to have a little dig here. This agenda today is full of unbudgeted spending, which we're going to approve the lot. But we've got to be better than that. And I think getting the scope right at the start of the project is really important. Getting the right people on board at the start of the project is really important, so that we don't have to, because $275,000 on top of our debt is not just a drop in the bucket. It is a substantial amount of money, and there's more that's going to go on this from this agenda today. So I think it's time we learn some lessons, and I think we need to start now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to move an amendment, if I may.
And your amendment is?
That 7A is not where we go, 7B is where we go.
1 second, Councillor. I just need to double check on this, just to make sure it's not a double negative. Yep, okay. And do you have a seconder? Do you want to just read that so everyone understands quite clearly?
7B states, declines to fund the extension to the seawall and the accessibility ramp at this time, but recommends that it is included for consideration in the next long-term plan.
And Councillor Jovich is seconding that. You'd like to speak to that?
I certainly would, Your Worship. Don't get me wrong, I've fully back the idea. However, it is time, as has been indicated, that we started making some difficult decisions. We have in point 9 that we're going to direct staff to establish a prioritisation of beaches that will be accessible for everyone and include a budget for consideration as part of the 2027 long-term plan. These aren't put in there just to waste ink and fill up paper. These are put in there because people want to see us do the right thing, but it has to be in a structured phasing. The scope we can get right. That's no problem. I will remind everyone that this is an estuary, not a beach. So it will need its own special consideration when it comes to point 9. Hence, my thinking that we need to show a bit of prudence And 275,000, that kind of came out of left field a wee bit for me. We have no identified budget as yet. We have a recession in play, and I would be more than happy to support this in the next LTP, but monetarily speaking, not right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Jovich.
Yeah, just in support of the recommendation, torn, and I think Gavin's nailed it right in terms of some of the comments. I think the critical thing is coming back to, we heard comments that this is a cute little beach, it's an estuary, and the amendment kind of, I'm behind prioritising which beaches should be looked at. I've seen what's happened at some of the other beaches, including Matapuri and that, and the staircases that are going down to the beach. I don't think they're accessible enough for our community, and I'm all for actually getting all this sorted. And I think a major prioritisation for the beaches around accessibility in particular needs to be done. And I'm more than in favour of actually, if I was on as an elected member next time, to not extend it out to the 10 years as Councillor Mackenzie suggested. It is interesting that, there's a lot of time that has been spent on this, and then we did hear from the original motion that we still don't have the scope right, and we've got to go and do this. So it won't be 275, it's going to be a hell of a lot, and this is a community that has, in terms of the Hikurangi Coastal Ward, has got a lot recently, and we're not even looking at after some of the other wards around. We can't even do pavements in Hikurangi. So, I'm in support of the amendment only because of it sends a signal to our council that we want to prioritise this for this area or this sector of the community.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a question for Jim and Alan. Well, probably more Jim. Item 3 on there, it talks about the notes that previous designs were which incorporated access ramps were rejected by NRC as they involved too much reclamation. The access ramp that's been proposed at this present moment, is a resource consent going to be required?
Yes, it will be. However, taking a step back, so yes, the original scope did include an accessibility ramp. It went through NRC, consent application went through a hearing, and the Commissioner declined it on the basis that there was reclamation. So the project that we're building now is very much like-for-like reclamation. It's what we could do within the consent. The new consent, and the team are working through that just to make sure it's prepared, whether it's built now or in the next LTP. Because we can set the start of the ramp further back, you can get the gradients to get down to the beach without further reclamation. So NRC's indication is that that's more likely to gain their support, but we still have to go through that process, but we've trying to accelerate that process, and we do have the support of the local HAPU, and the team are working through that.
So the indication that with the amendment here that it will go, that's not at this time, that will that allow the team enough time to actually get the resource consent ready, to get the planning process through, to make sure the project's actually done correctly and in the right location?
I won't predetermine what decisions made by council. I'll say is that the team are working through that process, and we will be encouraging NRC to go through their normal processing as quickly as possible, so that we're ready to go. The option that's available if we go sooner is to utilise the contract that we've got, which was put out to the market, and we've got competitive rates in there. But it's a pretty competitive environment as well. So that's probably more the procurement, whether we do it through the current contract with Clements, or whether we do it as a standalone project in the future.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I think Councillor Hulse is right. This is a very tricky one. We all, of course, want to keep the operating expenses down, but we also, as a core business, need to look after our elderly people, as been expressed by Councillor Peters, and our disabled people, as expressed by Councillor Mackenzie. I think Councillor Hulse is right, and Councillor Benny. This should have been in the scope at the beginning. It was,
but it wasn't put in the scope in a manner that could work, and that is unfortunate. I also am cognizant of the fact that with inflation in construction running as high as it is, that if we put this off, then yes, we may well budget it in, but we may well pay
Point of order,
more.
Your Worship. I do believe our costs are coming down, as indicated by a number of our contracts. They're coming in under engineers' estimates, not over.
Yeah, your point of view has been heard. However, Councillor Cooper is still going through his discussion at this present moment. He hasn't indicated any particular way on that. Councillor Cooper, keep going.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So yes, my thoughts are that the contract is in place. There's an opportunity to work with a contractor who is out there ready to go at rates that are good. And so I will be supporting the disabled community, the ageing community, and this motion. Thank you.
And Councillor McKenzie, I don't need to be reminded about standing orders. I actually have them in front of me here. Thank you very much. Councillor Connor.
Thank you. I just want to speak on to the point of where it's kind of splitting hairs. When this is a beach area, the term for an estuary is a partially enclosed coastal body of brackish water with one or more rivers or streams flowing into it and a free connection to the open sea. That does not state that that is not a beach. There are beaches that are alongside it, and they actually are joined onto these things. So when we're saying it's just an estuary, it's not just an estuary. It's not like we've got a footpath that doesn't go onto the road. It doesn't go onto a park. It's one of those things that there's many things in the ecosystem that actually are a part of it. So I just wanted to make that stated.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. You've just turned your... There we go. Perfect again. Councillor Ruka.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I didn't know this would require so much debate, to be fair. I think just, what a privilege to be able to walk down some stairs. What a privilege, what an honour for us to be able to do that. And not a privilege that's shared by everybody. And so I didn't think that this would require so much debate. Councillor Connop alluded to it earlier. A ramp is accessible to every single person. It's not just, it won't just be people in wheelchairs using it. It's accessible to literally everyone, while stairs aren't. I don't see, like our CEO's given us, it's in the agenda to say that there is some headroom for this, and we're approving an amount, and then for our staff to then go negotiate with the contractor to then bring back to us whatever the further amount is. So it'll require another decision anyway. All we're kind of doing is getting that ball rolling. I'm not comfortable with having to wait, potentially another few years just for something as simple as an accessibility ramp for a big portion of our community. So I'm supportive of the original motion for those reasons. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Harding.
Thank you, Te Kura Matua. I just wanted to ask, is this the same Whangarei seawall project that came to us and said that Hapu were holding it up? Kind of the consultation phases?
There were so there's two parts to the consent. There's the resource consent for the seawall, and then we had a consent to work under the notable trees, and that consent application brought interest from a iwi Hapu Trust, and then we had to work through those conversations. Ultimately, we are working with Whangarei Hapu, and they are in turn working with the iwi Hapu Trust, and they are the Whangarei Hapu are very supportive of this project and moving it forward.
Thank you. And where I was going with this, and just mihi to Councillor McKenzie for doing his own legwork around consulting with neighbours and then also with Hapu. And so where I'm going with this is that there was a long period where Hapu were holding things up. Now they're on board. I don't think we should wait another couple of years and then those opinions might change and then we'll get Hapu holding this up again. So I'm supportive of the original recommendations because they're clearly on board with this and the associated communities that are affected by this. And I think we should just get on with it. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Jovich, you going to ask a question?
Yeah, I am going to ask a question.
Okay.
Your Worship. In terms of the accessibility community in that, what work have we got in terms of out there in terms of the numbers that are using this particular beach? Because we're talking about prioritising a certain area and talking about the community wanting to use this and we're directing the funds towards this. So I'm just unclear. I haven't seen anything to actually substantiate or actually say that this is better than doing something at Whangarei Heads.
So the question that's going to the team then, just to make sure I understand it very clearly, is has this been surveyed amongst the community with the disability community to be prioritised above other areas? Is that what you're asking?
That and any sound, statistics in terms of what, is this actually a priority in this area for this?
Jim.
Through the chair, that information doesn't exist. We have, so the regional accessibility strategy was adopted by council, but the implementation and the prioritisation, the funding was declined in the long-term plan. So that prioritisation of beaches, understanding the users, making sure that we get the right facilities in those priority areas is work that needs to be done.
So we're making decisions on a whim, Your Worship.
So Councillor, I need to make sure you get your question correctly here. So
We make decisions on a whim in here.
Okay. Councillor, I don't believe we're making decisions on a whim here. We've got a motion which is in front of us, quite clearly in front of us. There is some holes in this information, which is what I'm trying to clarify and get the holes filled of and make sure your questions are being answered clearly and make sure our other elected members' questions are getting answered clearly.
Are you surprised there's holes in this? Because there's agenda. I mean, as a question to you, why are we getting holes in the agendas that are coming forward to us when all these things should be considered firstly? It's just a question.
And that one has actually been answered previously, Councillor, in relation to the scope of the project. For some reason, the scope of the project did not work out correctly in this particular case, and this is why the team and the item has come previously forward to us, and is why it's coming to us a motion today. So it's about, as the councillors have already highlighted before, it's about the scope, making sure we get the scope of the projects done right at the beginning. Councillor Peters, you got a question? No, you want to speak to it?
Yes, it is a question.
Yep.
How do elderly and disabled people use a beach which is not accessible? So how do you get data on the use of a beach when it's not accessible to the people you're trying to get the data from?
I see what you're asking. Yes, it's a very good question. Possibly a question that cannot be answered within this chamber. I do apologise about that. However, I do understand where you're going with that question, and that probably the question you want to propose to the staff is how do they make sure they prioritise the right beaches to the right areas to give accessibility so that we are actually getting disability people will be able to have access to certain areas?
Yeah, through the chair. So the methodology for how we would do that hasn't been developed. As I said, the funding wasn't approved in the long-term plan. Generally, what we would do when you look into this sort of exercise is look to see where there's likely to be high demand. So there's obviously the priority of the beaches, which are the beaches that are most used, and then where you've got areas where there are users who would be classified as disabled or require additional access, so that we have complete access. We do need to work through that process, and we do need to clarify what is the equipment that we put there, because I think when you look at the regional accessibility strategy and you look at there's a beach access website, it's not just having the accessibility ramp, you need the matting to get to the water, you need the appropriate changing facilities and things like that. So I think we need to think about this more holistically and go through a proper exercise so that we have the right information to inform the long-term plan.
Do we, for instance, ask the retirement village there or something like that? I mean, that's my question.
Yeah, so probably the question you need to be asking is, was the retirement village actually incorporated in this particular situation? Jim?
Yeah, I think Through the chair, this is a project that's been around for a long time. So in the original scope that was put forward, that was declined by NRC, there was accessibility ramps. I can't speak to the consultation that was taken back then. We have got the motions on the table for you to determine. It's a location. If you were wanting to include an accessibility ramp, there's a location there that can work. We're not saying that this is a priority beach, be it seaward facing or coastal facing or estuary facing. What we're saying is just the information that's in the paper.
Councillors, I'm going to just speak. You're going to ask a question, are you? Or? Okay, so I'm just going to, Jim, and no offence to the team here, and I have to make that very clear. This is an item which has been on the books, not necessarily the ramp has been on the books, but more the whole seawall has been on the books for a long time. It comes probably a concern from me as Mayor that we've got, we've gone to the regional council, we've approached them about getting resource consents to get certain ramps down, they then decline it. We approve an accessibility process, which we're going to go through, and now we're pushing again a project ahead of going through that properly. So while the funds may be sufficient headroom, I really do question how we're approaching this, because it's really it's not actually dealing with the situation. There's a lot of issues here, and especially it's been highlighted within this agenda item. There is a lot of holes within this, which I don't like to see, which causes a lot of questions by me, which actually cause questions towards your team as well, and I'm very conscious of that, and that's why I said I don't want there to be any offence here. I need you to understand that when the agenda items come to us, they need to be very clear to cover off all the issues. I'm well aware that the team, the time it's going to take for us to get resource consent now to get this ramp in place can actually take up to 2 years. I'm quite well aware of that. I'm quite well aware that the contractor itself may not be on site within that time frame. So again, I do say there is a lot of concerns that have come out about this agenda item. I'm well aware there is a community out at Whangarei who have made it very clear that they want this. They've made it very clear that they want to have this work done, and that is made very, very clear to us, especially by our disability community, especially by several other members within the Whangarei community. They've made it quite clear. The concern is the whole way this process has come about, and that's what I really come back down to, Jim and the team. I'm really concerned with that, and that's why at this present moment I'm very torn on this one, because I want to do the best for our community, yet I want to make sure our budgets and everything are done right at the beginning. Councillor McKenzie, would you like your right of reply?
I would, thank you, Your Worship.
Yep.
So just to remind people that this is the closest beach on the Tutukaka coast to town. So it is the first sandy beach.
Just a point of order, Your Worship, before we go any further. I think we're still debating the amendment, aren't we? So,
Councillor Holmes, when I've asked the Councillor McKenzie whether he wanted the reply, at this point there was actually no other person who was wanting to speak.
I'm not wishing to speak. I thought we were still. So this is a point of order. I'm asking for clarification. I thought we were considering Councillor Reid's amendment.
Yep.
In which case, does not Councillor Reid have the right to reply?
No, Councillor Reid does not get a right to reply on an amendment. That has been made very clear previously. Councillor Cooper has actually raised that up in a Councillor Benny's situation. Councillor McKenzie actually has the right to have a right to reply at this present moment, which then terminates all other discussions on this. As per standing orders. Councillor McKenzie, keep going.
Thank you. And yes, I agree with Councillor Hulse and Councillor Benny about getting the scope right. The scope isn't right. Even if there wasn't an accessible ramp added in here, they still have to do that southern bit of the wall. If they don't do it now, they're just going to have to come back and do it later, and it will cost more. That is a fundamental error in the scope of this project, and something that we're putting right through this. Yeah, I agree. It's been a messy process, and I didn't want to go about things this way, but we've been forced to because we're in the situation that we're in now. And the reality is we either make that wall resilient by replacing it and add in an accessible ramp for our disabled and, people who need, have mobility issues now, or we delay and we then try and fund a strategy to think about which beaches we might prioritise in the future. I mean, we're talking years and years away. We don't even have the money for the strategy in the budget. So this is something real that can be done now. It makes sense on a number of fronts. There's parking adjacent, it's close to town, and I'm fully in support of the original motion, not the amendment, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. The right of reply has been had. A division has been called on the amendment. Just to make sure that everyone understands what we're voting on, it is 1 through to 9, and it is 7B as the amendment which has been put forward by Councillor Reid. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Reid, and His Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillor Ruka, Councillor Peters, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Benny, Councillor Connop.
That's been carried. We'll now move back to the substantial motion. Division has been called again by Councillor Reid. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Ruka, Councillor Peters, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Benny, His Worship the Mayor, Councillor Connop.
Those against?
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Reid.
That's been carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 7.2, which is on page 43. Councillor Jovich is going to move that. Councillor Jovich, you'd like to read that, please?
Recommendation that the Council, 1, receive the report Central Library PO refurbishment. 2, approve the use of $110,000 currently unbudgeted operational spend funded from the library bequest donation held in a cash-backed reserve to refurbish the 10 PO outside the Central Library.
Yep. Councillor Peters, are you seconding that?
I am.
Okay. Councillor Jovich, I'll speak to that.
I'll reserve my right at the moment.
Yep. Okay. Councillor Peters, you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would. Thank you. This was originally an iconic project. I'm really thankful to Paula in finding the money to fix up these PO now. And there have been a lot of people who have mentioned it, so that without actually affecting our budget, that is really good. And I think that having art in the centre of city is really important to uplift your spirits and to think about the kotahitanga, the collectiveness of all the different people that those PO represent, including the Dalmatians. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Benny.
Yeah, couple of questions. Approve the use of $110,000 held in a cash-backed reserve. I had a look through our finance committee agenda. On the reserves, I just can't see anything on there that says about cash-back reserve, and I'm wondering where that is and how that's shown.
Alan is coming to the hot seat again. Thank you, Councillor Benny. Alan, you might pay to stay there for a bit.
Through the Chair, we don't show all the reserves in our finance report. There's about 25 in total. Most are small amounts. They're all disclosed in the annual report each year. Only a few are cash back. This is one because people actually gave us money when they died. So that money has been held in a separate bank account. There's only 2 or 3 we do that with. The rest actually not cash backed. In this case, the money is available, but it'll still throw through our profit and loss account as an expense when we spend it.
So just to confirm, it is in a separate cash reserve. It's sitting in there, in the bank. That's cool, and that's good. And so you're saying it's reported on in the annual plan, in the annual report?
In the annual report. We show the movements.
And are they itemised? I've never
Yes, they
seen
are.
them, which is cool. It'd be a good thing to know. So thank you, appreciate it.
Councillor Hulse.
Yes, and I'd actually remove the words in item 2, currently unbudgeted operation. I don't think there's a need for those words at all, and I'd actually like to move an amendment. We remove those words.
Okay, and your amendment, just to clarify, to make sure I've got your amendment here, what's your amendment saying?
just remove the words out of 2, currently unbudgeted operational spend. Because it should read, approve the use of 110,000 spend funded from the library bequeath donation fund.
And
That's
I'll
all it
second.
should be.
Just before that's moved and seconded, I just need to make very clear that you understand here, the way the motion is actually written is currently unbudgeted operational spend is actually still technically correct. So removing those words, while the team have found funds from another source, it still is technically unbudgeted operational expense. So I just make sure that you've got that correct.
Your Worship, I fully understand that, but my point is, I'm going to now speak to my amendment, and I'll explain, it'll make itself clear.
Okay.
Okay. So going way back, I was a member on the building committee that built the library. We had a set budget, and we set out to build a really nice library that the public would accept. Through the way we handled the project, we actually had a donation from Ian Brown and his wife from the family farm, and they offered us the trees to make the poe. And so that is a generous donation to the library build. We had a request from all the groups in the community that they'd like to have their status recognised, and if you go out there, that's why we've got the number of poes we've got there, because each group was recognised by the library committee that was a really good thing. We had a donation from these trees, and we actually had a blessing out there at 5 o'clock in the morning, one summer morning, and I had to milk the cows really early to get out the Tiraki at 5 o'clock on the edge of the Whangarei River. And we actually selected the trees that would go into those posts. And that is a total blessing, really good procedure, but really good buy-in from the library, very good buy-in from the, well actually it's quite aspirational for the library to include other things. But so it all tied together really good. And now, subject to that, after the build of the library, we have these people living on a yacht at the town basin, feeling that Whangarei had a really, really good asset, and they really treasured our library while they were in Whangarei, and bequeathed that money. The money was bequeathed to the library in this fund. So it's not an unbudgeted spend. It funded was there for occasions like this. The public good come out of that donation. I've explained where the public good was to actually get the PO in place, and now this is actually using money from another donation to actually make it better and keep it looking good. So that's why I've moved that amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hulse. Any other discussion? Councillor Harding.
I te kura mātua, I just want to tautoko Councillor Hulse's explanation there, and because of the confusion it has when it says unbudgeted, but it's covered by this bequeathing fund, but acknowledge that it draws an expense, so it's got to show up somewhere, doesn't it? Mihi atu.
Yeah.
Kia ora.
Yeah. And good points there. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to point out not only the Dalmatians are representative, but the 28th Maori Battalion A Company, which my father fought in.
Yep. Can be all seen there on page 43 and 44. Councillor Jovic.
Just a question.
Yep.
Thank you to Councillor Hulse and Councillor Benny for actually doing the amendment. It didn't sit comfortable with me. The question comes back to your wording, and that we haven't actually got an answer on that from a process perspective. I'm all in favour of the amendment, but that is my concern. I would have probably changed the wording to reflect that in any case, but I do understand that there's more professional people than me around the technicality side of it. So have we got, just to clarify, that we're not doing any...
Alan, this is probably going to be a question back to you again. I know where Councillor Jovic is going. It's because of the wording that was written there about unbudgeted operational expense. And as I said, I do understand that because it's not on our books, it's technically classified as unbudgeted operational. However, can you explain a bit further on that?
When this money is spent, it's an expense of council, regardless of where it comes from. And we'll be showing in our accounts, when we do the annual report, as an item of expenditure, which won't match any budget. Therefore, will lead to cost overruns for council. The fact the money already exists means we don't have to incur more debt or put a rates increase to fund this. is that the funding side is separate from the spending side. Regardless of where it comes from, this is expenditure, which is an expense of council, and currently it's unbudgeted. So taking the words out of the recommendation doesn't change that fact.
From an audit perspective, do we have any issues from our auditors in terms of?
So Councillor Jovich is asking if the words are taken out, from an auditor's point of view, would there be any issues?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you, Alan, for answering that question. Councillor Benny?
Yeah, and just acknowledging that I fully understand what Alan says, but for visibility purposes, for members of the public that sees that and sees that the council is voting again on unbudgeted operational spend when the money is there, I just think it clarifies it for members of the public rather than that technicality. That's why I've seconded the recommendation.
Okay. Yep. Any other questions? No other questions. Councillor Jovich, do you want your right to reply?
Yes, please.
Yep.
Thank you for the comments and the amendment. I suppose we do need to, one, acknowledge Carl and Mary Leonard for the bequest from the original, for the funds supplied. Been involved with this project quite a bit since I've started, and it's been ongoing. Don't know where you ladies were back then, because this is the kind of stuff that we actually ask you to actually go out and see how can we make things happen. So, you know, on behalf of us, it's a godsend, and thank you very much. But coming back to the scope and us doing this, we actually, Councillor Hulse would have done it back in the day when this was set up, is that we did have a plan to actually refurbish these, and that didn't get done. And this is why we're in this. They are in the state that they are. The works that will be done will actually secure them for a longer tenure, from what I have seen in terms of, especially in regards to the Dalmatian Poe. So I encourage that, and again, they're coming back to future elected members and everything, is that in terms of our budgets are that we are actually covering our bases on everything. So we are maintaining things, because when we don't, it comes back and hurts us more. Thank you.
Right of reply has been had. All those in favour? Any opposed? That's the amendment. That is correct. So, yep. So there was no opposition. So the amendment's become substantial. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to... Oh, it is 11 o'clock, and I have been reminded we are compulsory to have a 10-minute break.
Take 1 minute, Your Worship.
We'll be back
One sentence.
I understand that, Councillor Reid. We'll be back at 10 past 11. 11 past 11. May you please take your seats, please. Just before we move on to Andrew's agenda, which is 7.3, we're just going to do the cemetery one, which is 7.5 first. So stay there, Andrew, you'll be fine. We've just got to do 7.5, which is on page 61, because the team actually have to head off and back to the work, so we need to make sure that they can progress fairly quickly. So we're just bringing item 7.1, which is on page 61, forward. 7.5. 7.5 on page 61, which is the Manu Cemetery Extension Budget brought forward request. And Councillor Reid has on to move this. Would you like to read that, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. To speed the process, should we take it as read? Or
no, Councillor, we will.
Got to give a man a mark for trying. 2. Recommendations that the Council. 1. Approve the request to bring forward cemetery development budget to provide burial capacity at Manu Cemetery and to meet Council's obligations with regards to the Burial and Cremation Act 1964 as follows. A. Bury overhead power lines. Bring forward budget of $183,326 from year 5 to $33,326 in year 1 and $150,000 in year 2 of the LTP. B. Manu Cemetery Roading Network. Bring forward budget of $243,480 from year 9 and $806,325 from year 10 to $341,500 in year 2 and $708,305 in year 3 of the LTP. C. Manu Development Plan. Literalis $248,100 from year 10 to year 3 of the LTP. 2. Notes that the necessary budget adjustments will be reflected in the final 25-26 annual plan budget prior to adoption.
I have someone who's moved it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor, well, that was a tough call there. I'm going to go Councillor Rooker for seconding that one, okay? He was just on it, beating you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Reid, you'd like to speak to that, please?
Yeah, just briefly, Your Worship. It is a very busy place, strangely enough. People go there to rest in peace, but many of us have to be very lively, I suppose, to accommodate that fact. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Benny.
Seems I'm on the wrong side of everything today. I'm a bit grumpy about this one. So I remember a couple of years ago, I brought up with staff about buying a property, Kauri Hauhori Cemetery, where mayor and councillors are buried, as well as a large number of the community, to buy a small section of land next door to extend their cemetery. We're told clearly at that time that there was sufficient capacity at Manu for a long, long time. I can't remember the exact time, but this is, in my mind, and I'm prepared to say that I hope I'm wrong, that while I support what's happening here, that's contrary to the advice we were given. It wasn't that long ago, less than 2 years ago. So I've got a bit of an issue with that. Again, these money items that come up, so forwarding money from year 9 and year 10 of the LTP is not just a simple transaction that happens and we go on with life as general. Although the LTP is a 10-year plan, it is in effect a 3-year plan. And so we are putting ourselves under financial burden by bringing these in. Now, this is something we probably must do. But again, I don't, I would love us to give a small amount of money to the Kauri Hauhori Cemetery, who run a cemetery there at no cost to council, who could extend the facilities, who could deal with that, but we were clearly told there is sufficient capacity at Manu for a long time. So I'm just questioning the information that was brought to us a while ago, and I'm just, again, the budgeting from year 9 and year 10 of the LTP shows that, confirms to me that the information we got at the time was not sufficient. Otherwise, that would have been in year 2, 3, 4, 5 of the long-term plan, not year 9 and 10. So I've got some real concerns about this financially.
Okay. Thank you for asking. Thank you for going there, Councillor Benny. That has raised a couple of questions. I'm not sure who's going to answer, whether it's Jim or Alan, or in relation to the cemetery and the level of need. Can you please let us know when the other agenda item came to council, or do you know when that came through to council?
Through the chair, that's a specific question. I'd need more time to give a response to that.
Thank you very much. And in relation to this cemetery, is there a need to bring the funds? You've got the agenda item very clearly showing that you want to bring the funds forward. Is there an actual need to expand Manu?
So, through the chair, just acknowledging Councillor Benny's comments. In the long-term plan process, which we began in the October before the long-term plan was locked down, the asset management plan that we have for cemeteries did indicate that we were going to be reaching a capacity constraint. Through the LTP deliberations, there was money moved around, and unfortunately this one was pushed back out of the first 3 years and then further back through those considerations. It's obviously clear to see, and Stephen has brought it to Louis' attention, that we are reaching that capacity quicker than we thought. There is a plan, so we know how we're going to deal with it, and the work was identified in terms of the power lines and the roading and such to be able to implement it. We would always want to get it right in terms of the sequencing and timing of things in the long-term plan. In this case, we didn't. But we do need to implement these works. But it's definitely something that Sarah and her team are really looking at this in terms of the next long-term plan, making sure that we've got real confidence around the sequencing of things, particularly when it comes to providing additional capacity for things like cemeteries that we really have to keep on top of.
Thank you for that answer, Jim. I appreciate that. Okay. Yep. Jim has actually answered that, so it's thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. And is there any other questions or comments for the team? As I see, there's no other questions or comments. I'm well aware that this is a complex situation, and while you can always go with the puns of people wanting to go in there and all the rest, the most important thing right now is that we do have the correct capacity in dealing with the situation. I'm very conscious that over the years, and I know in Europe they've changed their whole system, so they're not actually doing burials as such, they're actually doing above ground cemeteries, and I'm quite conscious that we may actually end up having to go that way eventually. However, with the expansion that's been proposed at the present moment, it looks like we won't be needing to worry about that for another 10 years. And I appreciate the time and energy the team have taken to bring this together. Councillor Reid, would you like your right of reply?
Very briefly, Your Worship, thank you. Just a reminder, we have owned the land for some time. The capacity is there. It was budgeted for. It was simply pushed out to allow other priorities to slip through into earlier years. And a lot of people now, myself included, are forward planning. They're thinking ahead and purchasing plots, which takes up some of that available space that's already in situ. So, you know, it's not completely unexpected by me. I spend a bit of time up there just roaming around, checking on bits and pieces. And I will note that I would also like to see one more staff member up there full time, just so they can get on top of everything. It is a growing, honestly, it is a growing business. And we simply have not got enough staff up there at the moment to keep up with the progress.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Reid. Right of reply has been had. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Andrew, we're going to move on to your one now, which is on page 47, which is on 7.3, and Councillor Reid is moving that one as well.
Thank you, Your Worship.
And, yep, so...
Cracked it, I've got one with one sentence.
Okay, and that's page 47.
Recommendations that Council 1 approves the drinking water quality policy, policy 203, as attached.
And Councillor Peters has got her thumb up again to second that. Would you like to speak to that?
Just extremely briefly, Your Worship, this is probably no better instance of business as usual, and we just have to do it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Benny.
Thank you. I must have got out on the wrong side of the bed this morning because I do not see this as business as usual. So we look at page, I will not be voting for this, and I've told Andrew that. Page 50, purpose to provide safe, high quality drinking water that consistently meets legislative requirements and, not or, and the expectations of the community. I'm not going to go into this, but I cannot support this. I don't think it does this. No fault of our staff, no fault of our CE, but this is a requirement that we have to do. However, I cannot vote for it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Benny. Any other discussions? No other discussions. Right of reply for Councillor Reid? No, he's passing that. Right of reply has been had. All those in favour? Any opposed? Would you like that recorded? We'll now, that's been carried. We'll now move on to item 7.4, which is on page 51. I will move this. And that is that Council 1 notes the establishment of this City Centre Committee by the Mayor under Section 41A of the Local Government Act 2002 with the following membership of Councillor Phil Hulse, Councillor Paul Jovich and Councillor Carol Peters. 2, notes that the draft terms of reference for the City Centre Committee contained in attachment 1. 3, agrees that the committee will develop the final terms of reference ahead of a decision of council for consideration of adoption at the June 2025 meeting of council. 4, notes that the committee will meet as required but at a minimum of every month. 5, agrees that the John Street design be paused until the formation of the committee and council makes a decision on the adoption of the parking strategy at the June 2025 meeting of council. Have a seconder for that. Councillor Hulse is seconding that. So, councillors, we've had a lot of discussion over the central city area and a lot of discussion about how things are going forward. I have been reassured by the names that are represented there that they will be involving all of the urban ward councillors, because the key was to make sure that the urban ward councillors were very much heard from. It is also to make sure that anyone within our council, for example, on the Māori wards, on the any other ward within council, if you have a desire or a need or something to make sure it's being said, that these councillors will be taking your comments on board and coming back to council with projects or designs that are needed for the growth of our district. This is about the central city. One particular project which is in our long-term plan, which is listed in there, which is the John Street design. This also includes a lot of underground work and a timing and projects of that to happen. So that's why we need to have 2 people on there who are definitely urban ward councillors and who actually understand the environment around there. I am well aware that I have Councillor Reid, who is the infrastructure chair, who is very keen to make sure his voice is heard. I have got Councillor Scott McKenzie, who's very keen to make sure his voice is heard as well. And I am being reassured by this group that they will involve all elected members to be able to bring items back to council. Councillor Peters.
I would like to propose an amendment.
And your amendment is?
To add Councillor Scott McKenzie and to remove number 5. One second, I just need to check on that.
being full well that the terms of reference refers to 3 people, and also the fact that we will be, by removing John Street, does not actually deal with the issue that it's there. I need to check. So is it? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Peters, are you aware that by not having it there will then not actually address the issue?
If you would like, Your Worship, I'd like to, if that's the case,
Yeah.
I would reword it to read, agrees that John Street design is continued as whatever.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's where the issue actually lies, because there are so many projects which are actually determined by what actually happens before that project can actually proceed, and that's the reason why the Central City Committee was actually to be put forward, so that they can actually go through all the different projects and the wishes of the different elected members about all the projects for the Central City, so that John Street can proceed, because there are so many parts to it. So it's...
I hear you, Your Worship, but I am very much against making a decision and then going back on the decision. And I feel that there has been a debate on John Street that has gone ahead, and we've come to a position. So whether or not the staff need to do work to get that done is immaterial.
Yeah.
I think that we still need to continue with it on our books.
Yeah, unfortunately, Councillor, while I appreciate the sentiment of your amendment, it's actually counterproductive to what's actually the purpose of the motion, which is to set up the Central City Committee so that they can actually go through those processes. And that is the whole purpose of it, so we can actually get it sorted and get all views on the table without actually going in speculation.
I'm happy to debate it, Your Worship, but I do want to remove number 5.
Yeah, unfortunately, number 5 we can't remove, because that's actually where the issue actually lies. Are you still moving your motion, your amendment with Councillor Mackenzie on there?
Yes, but I do not want to pause John Street. So that's part of my motion.
And I appreciate that, Councillor. We're in a situation where there are a lot of projects which are...
I heard you the first time. Yeah. I still want to propose it.
Simon, do you want to? Yep.
Thank you. With the John Street, there is ambiguity regarding scope and the form of reinstatement and beautification along that street. Staff would really appreciate having clarity on exactly how and what will be the form of reinstatement. Now, one way of dealing with this is to have this particular committee look at it and confirm, or indeed we could have a separate agenda item, but staff need clarity on exactly what needs to be done here, because it's not entirely clear from the documentation that we've looked at from the LTP.
It's clear in my mind.
Yeah, unfortunately, Councillor, and I will refer to...
I hate going backwards.
Yeah, I realise that. I will refer to Standing Orders 23.5, where you need to actually go through there, and it's, when an amendment may not be accepted if it's deemed as in conflict with the motion referring to the governing body by the meeting. So it's actually, what you're asking is to actually remove the project which is actually needs to be discussed. So it's actually part of the project. So that's the whole problem, Councillor. As I said, while I appreciate the intent, this is the whole reason for having the Central City Committee, so that the project can proceed.
He pātai.
Yeah. As I said, I need to make sure I'm very clear on the motion first, or the amendments, or what's actually happening. So as I was saying, I can't actually accept that amendment as is.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Harding.
Is the recommendation around the formation of the committee?
Correct.
So 1 to 4 is the correct proposal for setting up the committee.
Yep.
Number 5 should go in the terms of reference as a priority of why the steering group has been set together. 1 to 4.
So your question is can the committee be created with then item 5 being included within the terms of reference?
Absolutely, if
Okay,
that's
so
exactly what the priority
I'm
is
just going to
about.
refer to the CE on this one to make sure that he is. Yep. Okay, so that would not negate the purpose of the setting up the committee. Yes.
Thank you.
So are you moving that?
I'm happy to move that. Second.
Just making sure, Councillor Harding, so you're saying you're doing 1 to 4 and 5 is included in the terms of reference?
As a priority of the terms of reference, yes, please.
Okay, so that's been moved, and Councillor Peters, you're seconding that. So that's been as amendment.
Is that with the inclusion of Councillor Mackenzie to the group, please?
That's not what you just said, so that's why I clarified it.
Oh, sorry. Well, it was the original motion that was, recommendation that was put forward was including Councillor Mackenzie on the membership, and then 1 to 4 is all about the committee. Number 5 is then put into the terms of reference.
Okay, so that's your amendment,
Yes.
and Councillor Peters, you're seconding that?
I'm happy to second that.
Yep.
Yeah.
You want to speak to it?
No, I think I've already explained it.
Councillor
Thank you.
Hulse.
Thank you, Worship. Actually, number 5 in the amendment is actually quite important because it actually states here that it's only pauses until the adoption of the parking strategy. I've been waiting over 3 years for the parking strategy to come back, and we still haven't finalised, hadn't been back in here. So how can we make a judgment call until we get the parking strategy sorted out? So that is why this committee's been set up, because staff have been pulled and pushed all over the place without any firm guidance, and the very people who were named there were actually the ones who are actually most concerns about what's happening in the CBD. But that's one point, is we need the parking strategy to be in here first, because that's the guiding principle of everything. And I just want to speak to that. There's actually a really good talk on Mike Hoskins' show this morning about why would people go into CBD in Auckland. And actually, because callers were saying, why would we go into CBD in Auckland? Because all we get at every visit now is more homelessness, people wandering around, more traffic cones, and more fines from cameras identifying us being in the wrong street. So those are the big deterrents why people aren't going to CBD. Our CBD is too big. We need to shrink the CBD size. We need to get the activities in the CBD that actually draw people in there. But council has got to be complementary. And all the things like the John Street upgrade, we've got to go back to the funders of that. The commercial ratepayers fund all development in a city. So on a commercial rate, where are the benefits from shop owners or business owners in Matapuri, Hikarangi, Whangarei, Waipu? Because they're the ones who are going to have to subsidise the businesses in town. So it's a real complicated issue, and I think that setting up this committee is the correct way to do it, because you work through all the issues, and then you make a recommendation to full council. And so there's a lot of work to be done. We haven't got much time to do it, but it's pretty essential we get started on it. So thank you.
Then Councillor Hulse. Councillor Peters. Actually, I'll go to Councillor Connor because he's been waiting patiently.
Thank you very much. I had a couple of questions, please, which is what I was wanting to do. First of all, I'll start off with one that was in the, where's the thing? Why, and I know Councillor Hulse has just touched on this, but why would this need to be put in place and wait until the parking strategy came into place?
So the question is why does this need to be paused until the parking strategy? Because the plan, as you can see on page, I thought it was in here. Yes, it is. On page of the agenda, page 59, clearly shows that car parking is being removed from John Street, and therefore we are not. We need to basically make sure that we first have a parking strategy done, so that we can work out where the parking is going to take place. Then we work out the John Street layout. And Councillor Mackenzie and everybody else has already highlighted previously, it is about getting scope of the projects done properly so that everything gets done in the right timing. to turn around and start taking away car parking within John Street, Urban Street, which is heavily used by residents and ratepayers, would be counterproductive to actually producing a working CBD. So the key is first to get the parking strategy done. Does that answer your question?
Page 57, 58, second question.
Yep.
What is the meaning that there's two different terms here? You've got City Centre Committee terms of reference, and then you've got Central Business District Committee guiding principles. Is this an error, or is what's happened here?
Jim, have you got an answer for that? Sorry, we just need to make sure clarification.
Through the chair, I wasn't author of the paper, but I think
this is to do with the terms of reference, which I do know the committee's got to come back and go through.
Yes.
Which committee is it?
So the City Centre Committee is what's in the terms of reference, and that was what was, just reading the paper, established by yourself as what was required.
So it's meant to be two City Centre Committee rather than City Centre and CBD.
Councillor, just so you understand, page 58 talks about the Central Business District Committee, and you're right, the names of it are incorrect, and you're absolutely correct about that. So this is referring to the Central City Committee, which is actually more in relation to working on what those projects are, which includes the Central CBD or Central Business District area. So the guiding principles. Now, I believe that Aaron's also coming here to answer that question as well.
Morena koutou. Through the chair, yes, it is a typo. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a communication breakdown from my departure at the start of this week. You'll notice the draft there was approved instead of coming back to staff to make the final amendment. So it was an oversight and a typo that stays in there.
And it has been already indicated within the agenda item that that's the first part of when you set up the committee, that's what they actually go through. So it's actually finalising those details.
Thank you. And the last question I have at this point in time, sorry, I can't find it on the actual page. I took a screenshot of it, so I knew where it was. 4.1, unless that's been modified.
We can come back to that one if you'd like. We can go.
Sorry, I was just in one of the part that I screenshotted. It said which contradicts the people on the thing. It actually said that you are obviously going to be chairing the committee. Councillor Hulse
that was an old, Councillor, that's correct. That was an old agenda item. That error was fixed straight away.
All right, sweet as. Just wanted to clarify on that one. Thank you.
Yep. So, Councillor Peters, you got a question?
I haven't spoken yet.
Okay.
Your Worship.
Yeah.
So I'd like to speak to it. I think that this is really important to do, that continuity is essential to the development of the central city. And in appointing Councillor Jovic, we have expertise in the business area. Councillor Hulse, long history of successfully doing things quickly and actually getting on with it and not mucking around. So that's really good. I wanted to add Councillor Scott McKenzie. Now, he has history in urban design and knowledge in that, and he's passionate about it. During the previous climate conference, he took a group of people through the city to look at the areas, look at the development, including a whole lot of children, and they talked about what they wanted to see. And one of the things they wanted to see was that connection, and that's one of the reasons that I was so, shall I say, intransigent, or what is the word? Annoying about keeping going with John Street, because I hate pausing. I really want to keep going with things, and I don't want to go backwards. So I think that, and as I said, I have heard a lot of people critiquing the centre of city. I've heard them talking about the town basin. What a fabulous place to be. It's world class, absolutely world class. I've heard them praise the centre of city, but they've always come back to, like, where's the connection? You know, so that's the reason why I've been very annoying about John Street. I also want us to work together with the councillors, to work together smoothly with our workers, with our planners, because that's the way we can smoothly go ahead. So that I believe that this committee can, and in that there will be progress. Thank you.
Councillor Harding, you've got your light still on.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I'd absolutely support Councillor Hols's corridor on the background.
Councillor,
the question.
Thank you.
Is the kaupapa for 7.4 for the establishment of a city centre committee?
That is correct.
Cool. That's what we should be focusing on for this. Kia ora. 1 to 4.
Okay. So that was your question?
Yes.
Okay, light. There we go. Thank you. Councillor Reid, you want to speak? Yep.
Thank you, Worship. I actually was in the background of this committee along with Councillor Holst and yourself and had some input into it. As much as I would like to have been there, it made more sense to have had our librarian of sorts, who's got all the history, Councillor Yavich, who's very, very adept at getting things done as well, and Councillor Peters, simply for her drive and the fact that she doesn't take no for an answer as a rule. Myself, I would like to have been there, but I do have a bit of a workload as it is, and was happy enough to take a side seat, a back seat, whatever, because the involvement will come around whatever infrastructure is decided. And with that, I was also happy enough that it was those three and that Councillor Mackenzie would be kind of like me on the side. We will both have input at some point in this development committee. So, you know, I'm pretty comfortable with where it is, and I would just like to see us get on and bloody well do something. Thank you.
Councillor, I just have to remind you of language, please. I appreciate that. Councillor Cooper?
Just following the lead from Councillor Mackenzie, I move a procedural motion that we put this to the vote, Your Worship.
You move a procedural motion to make this to the vote. This is the amendment? Yep. Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Holmes seconds that. All those in favour? Any opposed? Councillor Yovich, this is again the procedural part of it. Oh, yeah. Okay, right, sweet. So all agree with that. The amendment will now be put.
Could we have that read out, please?
Yep, the amendment, to make it very clear, is 1, notes the establishment of the City Central Committee by the Mayor under Section 41A of the Local Government Act 2002, and the following membership being Councillor Phil Holst, Councillor Paul Yovich, Councillor Carol Peters and Councillor Scott Mackenzie, as the amendment is. 2, notes that the draft terms of reference for the City Central Committee contained in Attachment 1. 3, agrees that the committee will develop the final terms of reference ahead of a decision of Council for consideration or adoption at the June 2025 meeting of Council. And 4, notes that the committee will meet as required, but at a minimum of 1 every month, with the item 5 being included within the terms of reference. And I've just got the team coming back to you, making sure. Correct, and thank you, Nicolene, for highlighting that. And that 5 actually is that the item 5 be included in the terms of reference. Sorry, Nicolene had to correct me on that, so it's actually, yeah.
Just point of clarification, Your Worship, that should be draft terms of reference, because it's not confirmed yet, right? Yeah.
Draft terms are correct, that's correct, yep.
Can I just have a clarification, Your Worship?
I think just to make, Councillor Mackenzie, before I go to you, Councillor Reid, just, Councillor Harding, I believe you're actually wanting it actually within the final terms of reference, aren't you? Not the draft terms of reference. So you're wanting it actually to be in the terms of reference when the terms of reference come through.
Yeah, I'm fine with that,
Your
because
Worship.
the one that's currently in there is the draft.
Right. Okay.
That contradicts point 3, which says agrees that the committee will develop the final terms of reference ahead of decision for council to the June 2025.
Councillor Mackenzie, I'm quite well aware of that. I was just trying to clarify to make sure Councillor Harding knew exactly what you're doing.
Your Worship.
Councillor Mackenzie, it's been ruled. Keep going. Councillor Reid, you've got a question?
Yes, Your Worship. I did not hear in Councillor Harding's amendment the mention of Councillor Mackenzie being on there. We've got 3 and the terms of reference have been drafted.
No, the terms of reference are in draft as it's been highlighted, so that when you're going into item 3 there clearly states that they'll be developing the terms of reference.
Right. So is Councillor Mackenzie included in there?
That is correct. She did make sure that was very much on item 1 there, to include Councillor Mackenzie.
That's fine. I'd like a division on
Which I did read out. I was just making sure of item 5 to make sure I had item 5 correctly, the way Councillor Harding had intended it to be. Right? So we're all well aware of the amendment. Division has been called by Councillor Reid. All those in favour? No, this is not, Councillor. This is the amendment.
Councillor Ruka, Councillor Peters, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Connop.
You missed one.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Benny.
Those against?
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Reid, Councillor Hulse, His Worship the Mayor.
That's been carried. It now becomes a substantial motion. Got that, Councillor Cooper? Excellent, just making sure. All those in favour? Division's been called by Councillor Reid. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Ruka, Councillor Peters, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Benny, Councillor Connop.
Those against?
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Reid, Councillor Hulse, and His Worship the Mayor.
That's been carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 7.6, which is the camping bylaw, which is on page 67. And Will is in position. I will move the motion that Council 1 continues to allow camping in non-self-contained motor vehicles by the designated sites listed in Schedules 3 and 4 of the Camping in Public Bases bylaw, the bylaw, by revoking clauses 9 and 10 of the bylaw and replacing them under Section 11A of the Freedom Camping Act 2011 and with new clauses 9 and 10 respectively, as shown with tracked changes in Attachment 1. 2. Amends all other clauses of the bylaw as shown with tracked changes in Attachment 1. And 3. Determines that the above amendment in the bylaw come into force on the 7th of June 2025. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rook is seconding that. Excellent. Thank you. Councillors, so just so you understand the purpose of this motion, and Will can very much quantify what I'm actually saying here, this is not about taking the bylaw back out for consultation. This is just making the bylaw meet what the New Zealand laws actually say. So that is all we're doing. This is just a tweaking of some words. And I do know the team have worked very hard in trying to tweak the words so they are said correctly and with commas and everything spaced in the right place. So as you can see through the agenda, it's quite clearly not changing anything of the intent of the camping bylaw. It is barely just making it adjust to the current laws of the land. With that being said, are there any discussions? Councillor Harding.
Thank you, Te Koromātua. Thank you, and realise it's a pretty much a legislative update, so there would be no change to any of those existing maps that have been included in the document, is that correct?
That's correct.
Through the chair, yes. Yep, that is correct.
Councillor Hulse.
Yeah, I've got a real issue on page 69. This all started off with freedom camping and camper vans and et cetera, You'd halfway down page 69, 6.1, it's under 4.3, 6.1. Now camping using a tent. So who's using a tent around town at the moment are the homeless people. We do not want them in our public camping ground areas. And yet it's in the commentary. I don't know whether it's, but it looks very, very unusual to have the word tent included when we've never discussed that at a workshop or a briefing, and now it's in a document for adoption.
Yeah, and I know that Will can answer this because I've actually asked the same question to Will. This is more to do with the Act. However, Will?
Through the chair, yes. So the Freedom Camping Act was amended, and under that amendment, the default position under the Freedom Camping Act is that camping is a permitted activity in public places in a self-contained motor vehicle or in a tent or in a temporary structure. We cannot change that. That is the default position in the enabling legislation. We make secondary legislation under that primary legislation, and so we need to remove the inconsistencies in our bylaw and have it reflect the new Act. That is simply it.
Does that answer your question?
It answers the question, but it doesn't change my mind for how I'm going to vote.
Appreciate that. Any other discussion? Councillor O'Connor.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't going to take issue with the statement that Councillor Hall said actually made, but I was going to raise the question about it in regards mainly to what do we have an example of what a temporary structure is in what limitations there is?
So, Will, this is another legal question. Does the law actually determine what the definition of a temporary structure is?
Off the top of my head, Your Worship, I don't think I can answer the question. I don't think that the Freedom Camping Act actually defines what a temporary structure is, but I can look into that and get back to you.
Appreciate that.
Secondary as well, kind of similar along the same lines. There's the other one where it mentions a unit. Now, that could be obviously transported on a trailer or whatnot. Does that mean like a unit as in like a housing structure unit, or is that something, can that be clarified for me, please?
Through the chair, I believe it's sort of like a camper van or I think you call it maybe a top loader, but simply a camper van that gets lifted onto the back of a ute, let's say, and then that gets transported around. It's to cover that, because it may not be classed as a vehicle otherwise under the Land Transport Act.
One last thing I'd just like to say as well, with the obviously change that allows self-contained all over the place, but also tents and temporary structures. It's odd that those are allowed versus a non-self-contained is not allowed. I know this is come through the Act. I'm not going to, we can't change that from where we are right now. But the fact of the matter is that if you're in a tent or an unself-contained vehicle, you're in exactly the same situation. Like there's no guarantee that you can do anything with whatever you have. So, yeah, it's just one of those issues that comes up with this, and there's so many gray areas that I've challenged in the past. I'm not going to do it today, but yeah, it just needs to be taken into account very carefully.
Thank you for those comments. No other discussions, Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got an issue. Parua Bay, by the boat ramp. Tents permitted in the designated site. There has been a summer of discontent in Whangarei Heads area due to an influx of illegal, well, not illegal, but long-term tent sites. So I will not be supporting this on that strength.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And I just need to highlight again, this is not changing our bylaw as such. This is just bringing it up to the code with the present legal system of the Freedom Camping Act. So anything that's in the plans there were in the plans previously. Which does pose the next question, was when the next review will be. And I know that Will and Bernadette would be quite happy to answer that.
Yes, through the chair. Its next review currently scheduled to be by 2030. We may get around to it sooner than that. depending on workloads and capacity.
Thank you very much, Will. That being said, Councillor Connick, you got another question?
Yeah, sorry. It was just one last little thing. It's really just about in the schedules, whatever you want, where the dots are and the explanations of them are. There's a few of them that actually run into each other, so it's actually quite hard to distinguish what sentences actually is. It's just a modification of just how much it's spaced out, just to be able to understand the thing. I just wanted to make sure it was brought up just whilst I could.
Yep, appreciate that, and the team have noted that. That being said, right reply, there's no point in having the right reply. It is clearly as identified within the agenda. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to item 7.7, which is the Future Development Strategy, and I see that Councillor Hulse. Sorry, I did not see that your name was, you had actually said that you're against. He did say when he spoke, but when I asked for voting, he didn't actually identify at that point. So just for future, just to make it very clear, when you, if you do oppose something during your speech, please make it, when I say, are there any against, please make it very clear at that point, because Nicolene cannot read minds, and neither can I. Yeah, if you want it recorded. Yeah. Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to move that the Whangarei Future Development Strategy is approved. 2, receives the Whangarei Future Development Strategy Technical Report, Attachment B. 3, authorises the Chief Executive to make minor editing amendments required to the Future Development Strategy and supporting documentation before publication. 4, notes the final recommendation from the Future Development Strategy Working Group to Whangarei District Council and Northern Regional Council to adopt Future Development Strategy. Notes the disestablishment of the Future Development Strategy Working Group following the final recommendation in accordance with the terms of reference, Attachment C. 6, notes the Whangarei District Council and the Northern Regional Council each need to formally adopt the Future Development Strategy, and Northern Regional Council intends to make a decision to adopt on Tuesday, the 27th of May 2025, and notes that pending the outcome of the recommendation 1 regarding the adoption, the Whangarei Future Development Strategy will supersede the Whangarei District Council Growth Strategy 2021.
And Councillor Mackenzie, you seconding that? Okay. Councillor Hulse.
I think today's discussion's highlighted a few problems we've got in council to get an alignment. Alignment, you know, we've done heaps and heaps of work, and this future development strategy has been under scrutiny for some time, and I'm not opposing anything to the staff or the council that have got in the strategy. What I'm saying here is there's a lot of difference in wording, and I've been very, very consistent in my approach to this, and the staff are fully aware of it, that a strategy should lead into a formal plan. We have not got a plan that shows the financial and the costings that this future development might lay on top of us, might require us to do. So it's very important we will stay with the intent of what we're trying to do here. We've been told by staff that the implementation part is to follow the strategy, which is probably, in my mind, not correct, but that is what they've been informing us all the way through. So when we do a future development strategy, we're signalling major growth, major development in certain areas, and we all know that the Spring Flat roundabout now has come out of some of that work and has incurred major costs onto this council. So it's very important that we approve the strategy at this point, but we do not formally adopt what we're doing at the moment, because it clearly shows intent of what we're going to do without our financials alongside it. To be really, as a council, we've got to take the concerns of all ratepayers on board to make sure that we are doing our homework, we are judging our decisions on experience, but also on the need for all our residents, not just some selected areas or fews. So I'm not questioning the work. I think that's great, and it's a requirement of the government to do that. So we're in a good space. All I'm just saying, when we get the financials and the implications of this, when it gets out in the public and is bashed around with our ratepayer groups, when it comes into our formal planning setting one, we can actually support what's in the strategy. Because strategy is the intent of showing direction. A plan is what we adopt to carry out the strategy. The plan is the important one. To get it to a case where we get the plans, where we actually got the projects in there, what we're doing, showing the public how we're going to do it, and then put the funding budget alongside. And that's based on years of experience sitting around here. I know what works, I know what doesn't work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. I just wanted to double check.
Point of order? Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you doing the same thing?
Yes. So you just...
yeah, so I just think the first words you used was approves the Whangarei District.
I just need to clarify that. That's exactly what I was just clarifying.
Yeah.
So, Councillor
And I don't know whether that was deliberate or not. I'm not sure.
It was approves.
Approves, that's correct.
Approves, okay.
And Simon, you want to comment on this?
If I may, just in regards to the agenda, you'll see in point 6, the councils need to formally adopt, not approve, but adopt. And so that's why item or resolution 1 is adopt.
I'm happy to amend that to use the word approves, because I've explained letting a plan out without financials or consideration of the implication of a plan is very unwise. Thank you.
So what you're saying is the motion that you want to have, you're having approves at the top, and then when it comes to formally approves the future development strategy. And, okay.
On that case, I withdraw my seconding because it needs to be adopted.
Okay, Councillor Reid is seconding that. So I just need to make sure we're just going to check on a few things here.
I just want to check in terms of the legislation, it requires to be adopted, not approved. I'm just checking.
Can I just, before we're going backwards and forwards here, I want to make sure from our legal team, Rebecca, can you please identify what the legislation actually requires us to do at this respect?
Do apologise, Rebecca. Do you want a moment?
Through the Chair, the legislation requires us to prepare a future development strategy. The language of adoption is consistent with all of the resolutions of the other Tier 1 and 2 councils who have adopted future development strategies. It's also consistent with what it says in the Local Government Act around preparing and adopting an infrastructure strategy, preparing and adopting a financial strategy. It's also consistent with the language we've used, and even in this term of council have used the language of adopt. Our regional accessibility strategy, our Te Tai Tokerau climate adaptation strategy. This is not an unusual terminology for us to use in council. And importantly, in terms of recognising...
Thank you, Bernadette. You've answered the question. That's all you really need to do. Appreciate that going further. Rebecca has actually also highlighted that legally the word of accept is also acceptable. Okay, well aware what your intentions are with the word adopt. However, Councillor Hulse is moving accepted. Councillor Reid has seconded that. Approved, that's right, make sure I got those words correctly. And I'm well aware, Bernadette and Hamish, you guys have worked a long hours on this. I'm well aware of that. I need to make sure legally we're abiding by the law. Rebecca has just clarified. Rebecca, you're coming back out again just to double check?
Sorry, can you clarify what you think I've just...
So just to make sure, Councillor Hulse is moving, as the motion he's moving is approves the Whangarei Future Development Strategy Attachment A, and then down in item 6 it says, notes that the Whangarei District Council and Northern Regional Council each need to formally approve the Future Development Strategy. So he's changed the word from adopt to approve.
Yeah, we've consulted on the basis that we would be adopting a future development strategy. So I don't see why we would change the wording now, and approving versus adoption gives it no more strength in terms of the strategy it is. Like, we are adopting a strategy, and we've adopted strategies before, financials or not.
So I'm not going to go backwards and forwards here. I need to make sure it's very clear. Councillor Hulse has moved approves. Are you changing your motion there, Councillor Hulse?
With all due respect, with all due respect, this is the first time the politicians get to vote on it, and that's why I am moving it. All of us have been in workshops up to this point. And so I'm pointing out that in contractual law, if you commit and show intent, there's a legal argument to say you should follow what's in the plan. What I'm saying is it makes sense to actually go out stronger with your plan, your financials together. And that is when you adopt the plan.
Yep.
That's
So-
what I'm saying.
and I
Otherwise,
appreciate-
we're being really, really well, I won't use the word I was thinking about.
So Councillor Holst has moved the motion. Councillor Reid has seconded it. There is debate going to be going on. I'm going to make sure, I just want to make sure we're very clear on what we're actually moving and seconding. Rebecca, I need to make sure from a legal stance, is there anything legally wrong with the way using approve instead of adopt? In accordance to the legislation and that's put through, was there a requirement to adopt?
The legislation is about making a decision, and we did it under a special consultative procedure, and in that statement of proposal we talked about adopting a future development strategy. So should we use the word adopt? I would say yes, to be consistent with what we've consulted on.
On the respect, though, we have no financials, which Councillor Holst has already highlighted. We've got nothing else.
We adopt things all the time that have no financials. We adopt standing orders, there are no financials. Many things are adopted by council that do not have financial or actual plans attached to them.
Well, I appreciate that and the answer. I'm going to go with Councillor Holst has moved this. I just needed to make sure we had quite clearly understand the ramifications of it.
Yep.
And you said before that there was not much difference between adopts and approves. So I need to make sure that...
I think I said that in a Teams message to Emily, but not in relation to the specifics that were being proposed. So I'm going to clarify that we consulted on adopting an FDS. If we wanted to be consistent with what we consulted on in our statement of proposal, we would use the word adoption.
It's point of order. You know, we don't get into debate with staff, but when we consult, the consultant has to come back to council to make a decision, and that's the point we are at now. It doesn't matter what we've consulted on. It's a final decision of council, and that's where we are now.
That's right. So, and again, I'm just going to, we're not going to go backwards and forwards here. Okay, I just need a clarification to make sure we're doing things legally. You've highlighted that there is possibly an issue, so I need the councillors to be aware of that when they're debating it. So it's been highlighted as, it's been moved as approved. So now we'll go to the open debate. Councillor Mackenzie.
I'd like to move an amendment, Your Worship.
And your amendment is?
To adopt the Whangarei Future Development Strategy as per staff recommendation.
And do you have a seconder? Councillor Holmes seconding. Would you like to speak to that?
I would. Look, I think it's a real shame to have gotten off on this foot. This is a really positive piece of work, and it should be recognised as so. This has taken 20 months. We've been working on this since September 2023. It's a major piece of work. We've had 24 3-hour-long workshops. The team have engaged widely with infrastructure providers and government agencies, lots of them, hapu, community and ratepayer groups. It's one of the most thorough engagement processes I've seen in my time on local government. When we went out with a draft for the FDS, it received incredibly strong positive feedback. We had 90% either supporting or strongly supporting, and the submissions that came back were thoughtful, intelligent and detailed. We then went through a hearings process and deliberation and refinement to work in all of that feedback. We haven't rushed this, we've made it better with every single step. The strategy plans for significant growth, 43,000 more people expected to live in Whangarei in the next 30 years. And we're not dealing with a blank canvas. We have serious constraints. We have areas that are prone to flooding, erosion, land instability, and we need to protect our productive soils and sites of significance to Māori. In that context, you need to come up with a very careful, well-considered plan, and I believe that's exactly what the team have done. This has been led by a really good working group, high-functioning, exemplary, I think. You know, we've had elected members from both NRC, WDC, and respective hapu standing committee representatives and dedicated staff. The working group have operated with mutual respect, robust debate, and real collaboration. Elected members have been involved in every stage. Take you back to the point where Jeff Crawford, Chair of NRC, and I presented to both councils. Staff have provided regular briefings and updates and have made time for elected members to meet individually to voice their concerns or feedback or ideas into the plan, into the strategy. The strategy itself is bold and transformative, but it's phased in slowly over time. It allows for significantly more housing and, more importantly, a greater diversity of housing types, because we know at the moment we have lots of standalone houses, but we have almost no other options for young people starting out or retirees wanting to downsize. The strategy focuses on new housing in the city and through a central north-south corridor. It supports giving people more ways to get around and will help to create a vibrant, economically resilient urban centre. Crucially, it prioritises upgrading and making the most of our existing infrastructure, because we know that spreading further and further out only adds massive costs to council and to ratepayers to service wider and wider areas. This strategy addresses some of the most fundamental issues that we face: how Whangarei will grow, and how we do that in a planned, efficient and future-focused way. It was unanimously approved and recommended by the working group, and I'm immensely proud of the work that's gone into this and grateful to the staff, the working group, elected members and the wider community for their involvement. And I support the motion to adopt Whangarei's first ever future development strategy.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Peters.
I endorse Councillor Mackenzie's impassioned speech. I think that what the team have done and the council committee have done is fabulous, really, really good. I've got my usual niggle, and this is a public document. The use of acronyms all the way through it actually affects readability. I do think that people on the council probably understand it, and even I understand some of it now. But I feel like we should be putting out public documents. I would like a policy about putting out public documents in readable language. That's me.
Thank you, Councillor Peters, for mentioning that. And yes, that was one of the comments that I put back to the team, and they know that, and Hamish is well aware of that. Making things readable and understandable by all parties was very much one of the aspects that I know the team were attempting to do the whole way through. So well done for highlighting that. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Congratulations to the team. Fantastic effort. Very well done. I know your hearts and souls have been in this project right from the word go, as has Councillor Mackenzie's. Just a little highlight. When you start to use 90% and you start calling out percentages, you want to be very careful, because out of 134 responses, it's actually 87% were either in favour or strongly in favour. And when you divide that by 44,000 households or rateable properties, that's 0.003% or thereabouts. Now, round to the legal side of things, I've done a bit of homework on this as well. To adopt is to take as your own, and in the case of adoption of a child, it is take as your own and nurture and grow, which is a lifetime commitment, and you're locked into it. Another meaning of adopt is to make law or policy. With both of those, there are huge lifetime commitments, which means you have really got nowhere to go should circumstances change. Now, if you choose an area and you say this is our future development strategy and we're going to adopt it, and you have not got the agreement of the said landowners in that area, you could be making a bit of a rod for your back. And that is something we do not want to do. We have to leave the path clear for our future councillors to make informed decisions, which they can do if this is approved as a strategy. They can then pick up on that, improve it, modify it, and run with it. It's like a live document. If you adopt this today, you are committing to do what is in here with absolutely no clarification of cost or commitment from future councils. And I think that would be extremely wrong of us to do. And I don't give a toss what Wellington says about you must adopt. Obviously, they have not looked into it and sought out the dictionary meaning of adopt. And that fills me with an awful lot of questions. And I'm sorry, but Councillor Hols's motion I would support. The amendment to adopt, I cannot. So I will be voting against it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff.
Councillor Harding.
Thank you, te kora matua, e mahi nunui ki a koutou, katoa, mo tō mahi hohonu, taumaha. So, yes, similar sentiments around congratulations for a huge piece of work. And support the sentiments from Councillor McKenzie on the huge amount of communications engagement that was undertaken in that 20 months. I too have a little bit of a, kind of a confusion around the adopt and the approval. So if you don't mind, I've picked out something similar Councillor Reid has done in the context of ideas, practices or technologies. Adoption signifies a willingness to integrate something new into existing systems, often requiring a change or adjustment. It's the willingness. Approval in these cases may be a precursor granting the authority or permission to proceed with the adoption, but does not necessarily mean participation or commitment to the change. And there lies my reason why I will support adoption. We need to be courageous in our roles here, and we need to show the willingness to integrate this huge piece of work into our mahi. Kia ora.
Thank you for that, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Harding. Councillor McKenzie, you've already spoken. You've got a question?
Yes, I do. I have 3 questions, Your Worship, to the staff through the chair. Is this document a live document that needs to be reviewed every 3 to 6 years?
Through the chair, yes.
Through the chair, is there an implementation stage which continues this work through to a more feasible plan?
Through the chair, yes.
And also, is the intent not for the FDS to inform the long-term plan and for budget costings to come out more specifically through that mechanism?
Through the chair, yes, and it's not just its intent, it's required to inform the LTP.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank the people who've done the work today. We've had great arguments for and against, and I'd just like to move a procedural motion that we vote on it. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Peters, you've already spoken. So, Councillor Rocky, you're moving that? You're seconding that, shall I say? Okay.
Let's just avoid a right of reply.
Sorry? No, Rooker. So a procedural motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
A division has been called. Sorry, a division has been called by Councillor Reid. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Ruka, Councillor Peters, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Benny, Councillor Connop.
Those against?
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Reid, Councillor Hulse, His Worship the Mayor.
It's been carried. The procedural motion has been put, so we now go on to the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? Division has been called.
So, sorry, Your Worship, clarification, this is a substantive motion?
No, this is about the amendments. You just, as previously, Councillor Cooper, you moved the procedural motion so that the amendment could be put. So we're now moving the amendment.
Sorry, Your Worship.
Okay. And the amendment is, as stated previously, that is as the agenda item is written.
So,
Okay. Quite clear. All those in favour, and the division has been called. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Ruka, Councillor Peters, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Harding, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Benny, Councillor Connop, and His Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillor Jovich, Councillor Reid, Councillor Hulse.
Now becomes a substantial motion. Councillor Hulse, would you like a right of reply?
Absolutely. This is a very unusual circumstance to be in. Like I've said all the way through, I actually support the work that's been done. What I'm trying to do is make sure we've got a coordinated approach that our ratepayers can understand. What we've just shown in the previous item, an agenda item written by our chief executive, was voted down. And now we come in here, where experienced councillors saying, let's look at the big picture here and say, we can do this a lot better and support our strategy. What is the point of having a strategy if you have not got your financials? Why haven't you, and we haven't got any timeline for delivery? I'll just go through some of the comments made around the table here. Councillor Mackenzie, he highlights this strategy, and it's got flooding, erosion, marine engagement, their requirements, the NRC, real collaboration, the cost of housing and our involvement in housing. It focuses on new houses, upgrading infrastructure. The strategy faces most fundamental requirements, but it doesn't include the implementation plan. That's the whole point. All those ones I read out that Councillor Mackenzie just brought up need funding from council, or otherwise the plan goes nowhere. I'm certain the planning staff and the people who have done this work would like to support a plan that's got financials and they actually say, wow, we've done this and we're getting it done. So everything in that plan is subject to resolutions through submissions and a long-term plan. And yet we've got nothing in the strategy. Nothing. I've encouraged staff to work along that line. It's been pointed out they've still got to do the implementation plan. If we could hurry that up, we could adopt this plan in 6 months' time. But to do it now without financial consideration, it just shows you how, I think, how disappointed most of our ratepayers are going to be about councils can say we're going to do this, commit ourselves to a whole heap of workloads, even our staff going further, without having financial accountability. I find that absolutely absurd, and I certainly will not support any action for council to do something like that. Thank you.
I think the right reply has been had. All those in favour? Aye. Yes. Any opposed? You would like it recorded? Yep. So Councillor Jovich, Reid and Hulse would like it recorded against. It's been carried. Thank you, councillors. We're now... I will now move us into confidential. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Cooper seconds that. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors.